afternoon and welcome to the City of STEM Career Day. My name is Amy Gratt and I'm the CEO of EXP, the Opportunity Engine, and I am delighted to be your guest host for the day. Normally this seat would be taken by Benjamin Dickow, President and Executive Director of the Columbia Memorial Space Center, but today he let me have it. And Ben, I love what you've done with the place. EXP is a nonprofit that connects youth to high-wage, high-growth careers. Normally this means STEM careers, so this is a perfect fit for my passions. The folks at City of STEM actually have let me show you a video today about EXP. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Connecting the classroom to the industry is huge for our students. When they come in, they may have no idea about what career they want to either pursue or even a career that they might be interested in. But when our kids leave here in 12th grade, our students are ready to go out to the world. They've already identified a major, and it's because of the experiences that EXP has provided our students.
EXP is the bridge from the high school to the industry. Many of our ITA students, the first work experience is with the EXP Summer Internship Program.
As the Education Programs Coordinator for the Port of LA, I work with EXP to select 20 high school students. We have a great time every summer. A lot of these students come in, they're very hungry, they're very eager to learn about a different career, whether it's in community relations or media relations or engineering or construction. We give them a little nudge in the direction that they want to get in.
My name is Magali Tolentino. I am an EXP alum and I am currently working with Centerline Logistics. Because of EXP is probably one of the main reasons I'm here. Thank you for calling Centerline Logistics. It helped me learn a lot. I've met people that encouraged me to go to college, who always told me to push myself and always gave words of encouragement, and it's helped me become the person I am today.
None of us in our careers got to where we are on our own. We all had help along the way. And so for me, EXP is a great platform, a great opportunity to be able to give back the way that I think many of us want to and sort of know that we should.
Every student deserves an opportunity. Every student deserves a clear, open path to a future that they deserve. We want to bring the opportunities, we want to bring the experiences, and we want to help those students thrive.
EXP has always wanted to expand into virtual programming in order to reach more students and more volunteers. When social distancing mandates began in spring 2020, the team jumped into action and began seamlessly delivering virtual programming. We are now actively engaging our students in virtual career readiness workshops, as well as virtual internships. In addition, the team is working really hard to build a library of virtual content focusing on high-wage, high-growth career sectors. This includes virtual guest speakers, and virtual workplace tours. And the exciting thing is, this allows us to reach industries, companies, and people from all over the world because we are no longer geographically bound. Without the support of our industry partners and volunteers, we would not have been able to provide programming. With their support, we've been able to build, deliver, and continue connecting industry into the classroom.
To be able to see them grow, not within their own character, but also within the community, that has made a difference and has shown that our students are influenced by the networking opportunities EXP has provided.
The student today who's lost in a classroom, doesn't know where to go, your mentorship helps guide them. The student who thinks they might want to be this or that, your internship helps focus them. The student who dreams of going to college but can't afford it, your scholarship funds that dream. Your support enables miracles to happen. Your time, your treasure, your talent helps make college and career dreams come true. Thank you.
Your support matters to students like me. Thank you for supporting EXP.
Thank you for supporting EXP.
Thank you for supporting EXP.
Wow, it's so nice to see us all together outside with people. I remember those days, and I really look forward to getting them back. But today, I am so excited to be introducing virtually 5 terrific sessions offered by our City of STEM partner organizations. There are over 100 of them this year, but I'm only here until 6:30, so you just get 5. But there is so much more. This is a month-long celebration of STEM excellence. And I hope you had the chance to check out the kickoff session on March 27th and see Bill Nye, the science guy, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar talk science. If you missed it then, be sure to check out the City of STEM YouTube site and you can relive the magic. But today, it's all about careers. And we will be highlighting organizations to see what exciting opportunities they offer in the STEM fields. With Caltech, we'll see how storms on Jupiter lead to better airplanes as grad students share their research on climate change, solar fuels, fluid dynamics, ancient earth, and carbon nanomaterials. And we will meet an amazing young man who has overcome turbulence in his own life to reach his STEM goals. DeVry University will be with us today presenting a career panel with local alumni and faculty who are established in systems design, testing, cybersecurity, technical project management, and much more. Maybe they can help me figure out how to keep my email from being hacked. Girls in Focus, an innovative online film program for girls and non-binary youth, will show us how they collaborate and immerse in technology in the artistry of filmmaking. And we'll learn from the Carrot Group how gaming and esports can lead to amazing STEM careers. And finally, Roundhouse Aquarium will take us on a dive into the life and career of an aquarist. As we go through each session, in between, I'm also going to take a moment to share my top 5 reasons why STEM careers are awesome. So I'll start with number 1. Number 1, the reason that most people Google on, it's the money. Yes, it is the money. Right out of college, STEM grads on average earn 26% more than their non-STEM counterparts. And according to Burning Glass, that's $66,123 compared to $52,299. I'll take that. And the difference gets bumped up even higher for Black and Latino students who study STEM careers. The STEM premium can be as high as 50%. Now that is awesome. Speaking of awesome, you know who else is awesome? Sponsors are awesome. And none of this magic happens without the support of our sponsors. Not only are these companies those who believe in STEM, they also invest in their future, which means they're investing in us today. Let's see the video. I think there's a video. Yay, there's a video. All right, everyone. Now let's start our program with Girls in
EXP
Focus.
helps
They'll
open
be
the
showing
doors
us
and
technology
creates
and film.
opportunity. We
Are
get
we ready to
students
take
to
it away,
envision a
ladies?
future that expands beyond the 4-block radius of their neighborhood and connects them to a world of opportunities.
So let me tell you a little bit about Girls in Focus. Girls in Focus mission is to connect girls and non-binary youth globally through a trailblazing remote film program called World in Focus, and have these students emerge as industry leaders. It's taught by entertainment professionals, and the program offers girls and non-binary youth a supportive and unique environment to collaborate and immerse in the technology and artistry of filmmaking, from concept to festival-ready films. And I definitely hope that we're going to be able to see some of these films. I previewed 2 of them last night, and they definitely tug at the heart. I can't even imagine, but apparently one of the filmmakers on there is only 10 years old. So this is some amazing work being done by our young ladies, and with the mentorship, they are able to make it all happen.
Quiet on set. Rolling. Scene 1, take 1, mark. Action.
The face of Hollywood has changed, but the gender disparity between men and women in leadership roles is still huge. I'm Dunya Merrill-Georgevich, a filmmaker and the founder of Girls in Focus. My team and I pioneered a remote online filmmaking intensive where girls and non-binary youth make their own films, from idea to festival-ready films, in just 3 weeks.
So what this program does is it helps females and girls start off at a very young age in order to get the experience they need in order to become confident enough so that they can enter the film world with vigor and know their path, and that they can stand up for themselves and speak for their creative vision.
Every single girl is entitled to a safe space to be creative, which is also free of gender-based discrimination.
I joined Girls in Focus because I thought it would be a great way for women who share the same passion to come together and break down this barrier that's been here for a very long time.
I want girls to find strength and encouragement within each other, especially in an industry that's very critical and primarily run by men.
This is a hub where girls and women from the industry can grow and learn and support each other. Hello, welcome. Thank you, City of STEM, and thanks for tuning in to Girls in Focus and for being here with us. Are there any filmmakers out there? Do you feel like your voice isn't being heard, or that you just aren't seeing yourself or your story on screen? I'm Dunya Georgevich, and I'm the founder of Girls in Focus. As a filmmaker, I wanted to help change the dire opportunities and statistics for minorities in film. And our all-girl and non-binary filmmaking program offers girls 12 to 18 a safe place to make their own films. So from idea through production and editing to festival-ready films in just 3 weeks. That is our summer program intensive. And you work in small groups. You actually create your own production company with your team, and all the decisions are made collaboratively. And you really get to explore every single facet and job that is usually on a film set. These things sometimes take years to figure out. So in this 3 weeks, you will do writing. You'll figure out if you want to make a documentary or you want to make a narrative film, and you will storyboard it. You will even act in it. You'll certainly learn the camera and lighting and sound, and then you'll learn industry software called Premiere for editing, and even animation and After Effects, which will then, by the 3rd week, finalize your film, you'll put music to it. And it's an incredible process. It's intense, it's fast, and it's action packed. So we have all kinds of instructors that are also throughout this process mentoring you, Emmy winners and Grammy winners that share their daily routines, their career paths, and how to get to where they are and what their day looks like. At the end of the program, we have a film festival that screens all the films, and this is open to the public. It launches the films on their film festival circuit. And later on, you're going to see clips from 2 films that were made last summer, one feature documentary, one narrative film. And one of them went into several film festivals. So that's just your experience just keeps going and learning kind of the nuts and bolts of the life of a filmmaker. If you guys have any questions, I know you can type them in. I will definitely try and answer everything that pops up. So feel free to ask anything regarding the program. We have several different programs. We have monthly workshops, and you'll also meet the filmmakers a little bit later. And if you have any questions for them, just go ahead and type it in. Another cool thing while you work in the production company that you created with your team is, like I said, finding out what your niche might be. A lot of girls show up and say that they want to be directors, and then they start editing and they just fall in love with the editing process. It is something that you don't always get the opportunity to do. So that's another huge opportunity and perk of the summer intensive. Our summer intensive does start June 14th this summer, and it goes until July 2nd. It's Monday through Friday from 10 to 5, so it's a full day. And like I said, you're going to have workshops morning and afternoon with just very high level industry professionals and filmmakers who are going to come and teach their area of expertise. And you'll have time to work and collaborate in developing your ideas and the film that you want to make. So we really embrace cutting edge technology. So pivoting to a virtual remote online filmmaking curriculum is really what we did when COVID hit last year. And it's what launched our summer intensive program, which is called World in Focus. We really celebrate creativity and technology in a perfect fusion to bring female filmmakers worldwide together. That's the vision. So we nurture the technical and creative journeys in a safe space, and we hope to have some international participants this summer, which is super exciting. That's kind of part of the vision and part of the payoff for this pivot that we have done, where I think we're really pioneers in establishing remote filmmaking. The rest of the film industry kind of stopped because traditional filmmaking is what it is, but we decided to keep the creative and collaborative process going online, and therefore it's opened up to this platform that is worldwide and where girls can connect from really opposite sides of the world and really create their films together, and as well as making lasting friendships and connections. So our film festival is going to be at the end of that program. It is on July 2nd at 7 p.m. And coming up to prepare for this summer intensive, this Saturday, we have an incredible workshop. So once a month, we do our month in focus, as we call it, and it's a weekend workshop in any area of the film process. This Saturday, we have an amazing guy coming in. He's a very high level a creative director and story writer from Marvel Entertainment. His name is Joe Caseta, and he's going to be teaching a story workshop on April 10th at 10 a.m. So if you want to sign up for that, whether you're working on something or you want to prep maybe for the film that you might want to work on this summer, no previous experience is necessary, and you can sign up on Eventbrite. So let me just show you a video from one of our board members. We have an incredible group of women on their board of directors, and one of them is Elaine, and she'll tell you a little bit more about the workshop. So let's watch Elaine's video.
Hi there, it's Elaine with Girls in Focus. We are proud to offer year-round workshops where participants deep dive into filmmaking techniques. We already held 2 this year, a 2-day film lighting workshop and a 1-day stop-motion animation workshop. We had girls from across the globe attending. Up next is Finding Your Character's Heart with Joe Casita, EVP at Marvel Entertainment. So come, start developing the next characters in your script and be ready for our summer intensive program.
Hi again. I hope you enjoyed Elaine. She's just one of our board members who's also an actor. We have board members from all areas of both the film industry and other industries that help run Girls in Focus. But did I mention that we also have a youth advisory board? So our youth advisory board, as we like to call it, YAB, is once you enroll in our filmmaking program intensive, you're invited to join the board and help run our nonprofit. So you get the full benefit of becoming a seasoned entrepreneur. So now I want to introduce some of our YAB members to you and our filmmakers. Let's see if you could see, here comes Summer Bitar, Madeline Tello, and Isabella Cousineau. Summer, maybe you can wave so people know who you are. You are the president of the Youth Advisory Board. Just tell us a little bit about your filmmaking interests and why you joined YAB and how it's been for you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Summer, and I'm an aspiring film director. I've absolutely loved working with Girls in Focus. Being a part of the Youth Advisory Board has given me some incredibly valuable leadership experience that I know will help me in my future career and beyond. I got the opportunity to design flyers for events using Adobe and Canva and contribute to ideas and planning for various Girls in Focus events and programming. I learned so much more about the administrative inner workings of a nonprofit while working with experienced film veterans to promote intersectional feminism and gender minority representation in film. For years, film has been my creative outlet. As a girl with ADHD, it took me a long time to get diagnosed, and filmmaking has given me a greater understanding of my brain and working with my neurodivergency, and really it's shaped the way I cultivate my creative process. So I hope to continue learning and growing as a part of this awesome community.
That's amazing, especially right now. I'm so glad you shared that. You know, mental health in general has become such a challenge and concern for a lot of people, and being in isolation has really led to some strange and new territories, and having this platform online to continue learning and being creative and collaborating together is really a lifeline. So thanks for sharing that. So maybe you can say just a few more words about what you got from our summer program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, more than just teaching me how to make a film, I think it also gave me a space to explore my creativity and work with the community and my fellow filmmakers, both creatively and in the context of furthering my interest in intersectionality and feminism and minority representation in film.
Amazing. Yeah, you are such a talented filmmaker and a great leader. So let's watch a clip from last summer's feature documentary called The Sound of Justice. and then we can chat about it.
What I find interesting when you ask the question, who do you think is most targeted for social injustice? I think it is women, because even across the world, you see women are always put second. And it's interesting because in some countries, depending on your race, you're put higher, but it's a constant variable of being a woman and being less than a man is seen. Because men are biologically different than women, and women are biologically different from men, but there's power that comes from that, and I think people need to open their eyes to that and express equality between the two sexes.
Every woman in the world, no matter what class, color, or background, has experienced this in some way or another. From the very first time that they were told that they couldn't do something because girls don't do that, or because boys do that. The fact that you can't walk on the street and feel safe at certain times a day or in certain areas is already a form of injustice. And we don't think about it necessarily in that way. Double standards that we're put to, having to be twice as good at everything to get the same recognition as a man who's maybe half as good.
I love that film. The Sound of Justice was an incredible project. It was a documentary feature made last summer, kind of at the height of a lot of social upheaval that was happening all around us. And two of our filmmakers who are also on our youth advisory board, Madeline and Isabella, we'll talk about the making of this documentary during our pilot program. So why don't we start with you, Madeline? Tell us maybe a little bit about your film experience and how did working on this film feel?
Well, working with you on a previous film really marked the beginning of my decision to pursue film a lot more seriously after having studied ballet for most of my life. And this film was my first time editing and using Premiere software ever on my own. And really, if you asked me beforehand, I would have said that I can't do this, but definitely after finishing this film, it made me feel like I can get through challenging things in the right environment. People really seem to like the film, which is really great. I've heard that it's been in a few film festivals, which is really exciting to hear. And as far as, I'm passionate about the films made by Latinos, and I love the mission and the message of Girls in Focus that it addresses, of the lack of diversity and representation of minorities in the film industry.
Yeah, I mean, that is part of our mission, our core mission, and to just really prepare minorities and all minorities in film, and especially young female filmmakers and non-binary youth, and really have them step in and have the tools and become leaders that they can change the narrative, that they can have their voice be heard, that they can tell their stories that you don't see most of the time on screen anywhere. So thanks, Madeline. Thanks for sharing that. Can you speak about the actual pilot program that you were part of and the making of the documentary feature, The Sound of Justice? How did you collaborate with your team?
Well, working on the pilot program last summer was an extremely special opportunity because it was a very new thing and it was also a very safe environment to work in. We all had to really rely on each other to communicate and really stay on top of all of that because it was such a unique experience. So making a film remotely made us really not afraid to ask questions, which I feel doesn't really happen in a lot of traditional workplaces. So I personally feel like I had a lot less experience in my in my editing as compared to the other filmmakers that I worked with, but they really helped me along the way and never made me feel bad about asking questions, and they were all so encouraging, which I feel is very true of all of the programs that I have seen at Girls in Focus. I definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience, I think, for everyone. And thanks for just sharing the whole learning curve. We kind of that was one of the first projects that we did. So there were things that we had to overcome, and we did. And I think the result kind of blew everyone away. So thanks, Madeline. Isabella, last but not least, what about you? What's your experience first as an artist, and then what drew you to get involved with Girls in Focus?
So what I think we all know is that there are many different roads and aspects in filmmaking, and personally my favorite element is the writing, and I love incorporating psychology within that. And as filmmakers, I believe it's important that we capture moments that are currently inspiring us and moving you, and that's luckily what we were able to do with the pilot program. We created a film about the meaning of social justice, which was mostly inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement taking place at that same time of the pilot program, as well as other events. And not only was it a wonderful opportunity to capture history in the making, but it also gave me a chance to further explore my Premiere software, which kind of made me feel like a mad genius, not gonna lie, even though I was not that great at it. But the process of collaborating with others virtually, it wasn't easy at first, but once we got used to communicating on screen, we were able to build each other up, know who was good at what, and like really communicate and connect. And in the end, create a film that was accepted into at least 2 film festivals, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yes, it was, and it got a lot of acclaim, and it really was a testament to so many things. But you know, your creativity, the way you guys solved problems, the way you worked together, and just kind of built on each other's ideas and knowledge, and just it really had exponential challenges, but you guys just rose to the occasion to create something really special, and hopefully that clip enticed everyone. So both of the films from last summer are on our website and can be viewed in full length. It's girls-in-focus.com and under the film tab. So let's talk a little bit more, Isabella. What drew you to join YAB, the Youth Advisory Board?
What first attracted me to YAB, to the Youth Advisory Board, was the idea of finding a community with young filmmakers, which I somewhat had before the pandemic struck, but since that happened, any community I had in the film world was just basically gone. And it was a chance to find filmmaking friends, and more importantly, ones that build each other up. And that's exactly why I've stayed on YAB for almost over a year now, if I remember correctly. And I just love helping others find that community, because in helping them find it, I'm expanding my own film family.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful part of this, that, you know, as you connect, you know, it's exponential again, because other people are inspired by what you're doing and finding a place to join. And okay, so I guess let's show the second clip and take a quick look at Children of Today, which was the narrative film we made last summer.
Well, for years now, I have been just really sad, and so I tried to talk to my mom about it. It was about a week ago when I was getting into the car. We were on our way to the grocery store. Hey Mom, can I ask you something?
Yeah, what is it?
I think there's something wrong with me.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just I feel sad all the time, and it doesn't feel normal to me. Like I just want to be happy like everyone else.
Oh, don't be silly, Zoe. It's perfectly normal to go through emotions. It's part of being, well, teenager. Seriously, don't worry about it.
Okay. And that's when I realized I needed to take things into my own hands.
Glad you did. And trust me, it's not all in your head. It's really not. And just know you're not going crazy.
Thanks.
All right. So, Olivia, is there anything that you would like to discuss with us? I know we might be a little older than you, but know that we were once your age, so we will understand.
So this film had 4 filmmakers, and one of them was only 10 years old. And all the filmmakers wrote, acted, edited their stories, and weaved them together in this creative storyline of a support group on Zoom. So here's our flyers. We are hoping to see you this Saturday at our story workshop with Marvel Entertainment creative director Joe Caseta at 10 a.m. You can sign up on Eventbrite. And then this summer, we really are looking forward to you joining us to make a film in the 3-week program. We do offer scholarships, so you can sign up. It's an early bird promotion now on Eventbrite, but no girl is ever turned away. So do reach out to us, and we hope to see you in production. Thank you. Thanks, City of Hope.
Thank you, ladies. That was inspirational. And it's amazing what young people are capable given the tool. It's amazing what young people are capable of given the tools and the mentorship. And what did I say about those movies? I was that girl in the car with her mother. And it just touched my heart watching it. And as well, the Sound of Justice movie, I want my sons to watch that. Really excellent and impactful work. Girls in Focus. Well, I'm on my number 2 reason why STEM careers are awesome, and it relates to what I just said, impact. If you are in a STEM career, you are making an impact. You might be working for the City of LA on sustainability models. You might be building a rover over at JPL to conquer the next planet. You might even be a Downey High School science teacher. You're in a STEM career, you're making an impact, whether that be on an individual or, frankly, on a planet. I also want to remind you, even though this is Career Day, we have an entire month of activities happening on Thursdays throughout April. April 15th, it's STEM Educators Day. April 22nd is my favorite, Earth Day. And April 29th is STEM Innovation in Los Angeles. There's information on each day's events found on our website at cityofstem.org. And while you're there, please remember to follow us at City of STEM on Facebook for oldsters like me, or Instagram and Twitter for the rest of you young folks. And of course, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next, we have an exciting discussion on how STEM and gaming can go hand in hand. We will learn from industry experts how video gaming can help introduce students to STEM fields and careers. And for all of the parents in the audience this afternoon, it'll make you feel so much less guilty for letting your son or daughter play Fortnite all day long. They're going to get a career out of it. So let's hear it from the folks at Carrot Group and our panelists and learn about how esports can lead to a STEM career.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're very excited to have you join us for this video game and STEM panel as part of City of STEM. As you all know, City of STEM is a huge LA County initiative to really not only celebrate the history and the rich history of STEM in Los Angeles, but kind of talk about the future of where STEM's going in this great county. But what a lot of people don't realize is how video games has not only had a huge impact on the LA community, but also how it has impacted students and it relates to STEM. And so we're going to spend the next 20 minutes kind of talking about why video games and why is it important for students to really embrace the idea of how video games can really take their enthusiasm for playing games and really talk about careers behind the games, not only in game design, programming, coding, but in technology. I'm joined by two experts here who have not only grown up playing video games, but have used video games in their current occupations. But before we introduce our great panelists, I also wanted to mention that City of STEM is actually, we've created an esports tournament sponsored by Downey Unified School District. And this is the first annual esports tournament. So the question is why did City of STEM actually include an esports tournament this year? Well, as I said, there is a huge connection between esports and STEM fields and careers. And so we like to not only talk about that tournament, but then talk about how we can really inspire students to take their love of gaming and turn it into a career. So let's go ahead and watch the promo video for this year's City of STEM Esports High School Champion Tournament.
He's coming back in for some ghost tap. Yeah! Nice leer, man. Stuck into the floor.
Thank you. So hopefully you got a sense from that video that we're really excited to talk about not only bringing esports to LA County, but how it relates to STEM and how City of STEM is part of that. So today, I like to bring in two experts in the industry to kind of give their perspective. I like to have them actually introduce themselves because they both have just rich backgrounds. So honored to have them join us. We also have Charles Babb with us, and I've been so honored to be working with Charles for many years. Charles, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Charles Babb. My whole career has been based around animation and video games. I started off at Tokyo Pop working in anime and manga, And then I took a stint into video game production and design. I worked on such titles as Guitar Hero, Killzone 3, Uncharted 3. And then I went into virtual reality and augmented reality for a couple of years. In virtual reality and augmented reality, I did the Messy Truth in VR and Mr. Mercedes Escape Layer. And then I left there and actually went back into VR and AR in theme parks. So I currently make AR and VR experiences in theme parks.
That's great, Charles. So as you can see, we have two experts in the field who can obviously share their insights. So also we want to talk about Los Angeles and again, City of STEM and how it relates to the area. What's really exciting about this area is that we have two of the largest game companies in the world based right here. We have Activision Blizzard and we have Riot. Why is that important? Because there's such a rich opportunity for students to get involved in gaming in LA. The idea that more and more studios are popping up, and not only with VR opportunities, but AR opportunities. And a lot of the smaller studios are popping up around cities, around the LA area. And so that is just a big opportunity. Not only that, but colleges that are feeding those companies, the local colleges, UCLA, USC, UCI, Northridge, are all creating programs to really kind of contribute to that ecosystem of STEM, game design and programming, coding, to get these students prepared for the future. And Charles, you can speak to that. So tell us a little bit about the video game production and kind of the, the influence of growing up in video games and kind of how you are doing it now, and just that. How has video games influenced you where you are today?
Okay. I guess I can go back. Let me date myself. My first computer was the Commodore VIC-20. And I remember when it had a tape drive to be your storage. And my brother was a coder. He's 6 years older than me. And I was 7. I wanted to play on the computer. But in order to play on the computer, I had to write lines of code out of PC Magazine. And I had to write lines of code for him. So that's where I got my start in video games. And then we got to the Commodore 64. And oh man, those graphics were amazing. Those 4-bit graphics were everything. And that's where I found my love for video games. Video games does one thing well, and it teaches people how to solve problems. And it constantly challenges you with a new problem, and you enjoy solving these problems. It teaches you how to rethink things. And for me, I'm a designer by trade, and I went into production. So design is we design the video game, and I do systems designs, and I do combat design. So that's where my background was. And then production, you actually control the whole entire pipeline of producing a project. So for me, I loved how systems work, and that allowed me to use that knowledge on how to produce video games better. So video games taught me how to produce better video games because there's always a better way to do things. And as Michael was saying, one game has to outdo the next game. And generation after generation, we had to get better. What people don't realize is video games lead technology drive. The reason we have great graphics now, the reason movies can benefit from all the CG we have, like we just had King Kong versus Godzilla Godzilla versus King Kong come out, and it benefited because video games. A lot of the tools they use, video games drive that. And we had to do unique things. We had to trick the eye. There's a lot of illusion in video games that we've had to grow up with. And now we're getting to a point where that illusion doesn't matter anymore. And what we want to see video games become smarter. We want artificial intelligence to rise up. We want actual competition from an enemy that knows our patterns and figures us out so we can solve the problem differently. And that's what video games allow us to do. So I remember when video games were little tiny pixels on the screen from Atari to now where it's like, wow, this looks like a major motion picture. And being in video games, you always want to look towards the future. So we have Unreal Engine 5 about to come out. And what they do with lighting and particles is amazing. And we're looking forward to that and how that's going to actually influence us as people when we go out in the real world, because we have deep fakes. We have metahumans. We have artificial intelligence that's constantly evolving and growing. And there's a gang of fields that are opening up new opportunities for everybody to actually join into this industry. And it comes through video games. Like, you know, you can be good at video games, but some of the best video game players are some of the best strategists that I know because they figured out how to strategize through video games, be it sports games, fighting games, or just single player adventure games. You're constantly solving problems.
Well, Charles, you know, that's a great point. The problem solving aspect of video game playing is so, well, first of all, it's in real time and you're doing it really fast. But there's a lot of other soft skills, so to speak, collaboration with, you're working with a team, whether it's with esports. You know, what other ways do you think video games can benefit the players in terms of how they're functioning? Also, as you see kind of careers around you, how do you think video games has kind of contributed to kind of the mindset that your coworkers have?
Yeah, online identity. One thing that's really big about video games is you do have to learn how to collaborate in a team setting. There's been a rise of the online game, and we've seen that in the last 2 decades, particularly with Halo. Halo kicked off the rise of the online game, and now we have teams like Destiny. People have guilds in World of Warcraft, and it teaches you how to work well with people, even people you really don't know. And then you get to know them and you get to know how they operate and how they function. What you realize is you can't have a team of the same. A team of the same is the first team defeated. You want team where players act differently and they build on each other's strengths and weaknesses. And that's what you want as a team player. If you watch League of Legends, if you watch some of the best teams, those teams are very diverse players and they play differently. They understand the other teammates' weaknesses and they know when those weaknesses kick in on them and they're there to compensate for it. So there's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of soft skills. There's a lot of communication, both verbal and what you see on screen. You know, like everybody thinks a lot of teams talk verbally. When you see some of these championships go on, they're not physically talking to each other. They just watch each other and they know what the other person's doing. It comes like intuition. And those skills are very, very important for people. Our intuitive skills are improving as humans. And we need to lean in on that a little bit more. I'm from the generation where we have to spell everything out. We have to write everything out. We got to put it in an email, where some of these children are empathic enough to actually watch somebody do something like, oh, they're suffering right now. Let me go help. They just do it. We're like, why didn't you tell me you need help? For them, they're like, I realize this is where we're lagging on this project. So I'm going to go help right now. I'm good at this. So let me go help them out. So that's the benefit we have of video games.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about the future of video gaming. I mean, we talked about how technology is improving, but we also know screens are changing. So rather than your traditional TV screen or your computer screen, now we're seeing screens around the head with VR and AR. That's virtual reality and artificial reality. So Michael, talk a little bit about how, from an engineering perspective, how do you think gaming and the fact that it's kind of morphing itself around the head rather than using controllers and playing it on a screen? It might be more interactive, but how do you see that kind of playing out in kind of in the areas that you've kind of come from and where you think it's going to be going?
I will answer that question, but I want to make a comment kind of about where the technology is going, kind of contrasting where it's been to where it's going, because that's what we started with there. What's interesting is about the time that both of us were growing up, one person could write a video game, right? One or two people can. They still can. One or two people still can write a video game. But these bigger and bigger games, these what they call the AAA games, you know, your Cyberpunks and your Maddens, right? They're becoming so big, you need 500 people, 1,000 people making them. So it's really interesting because at the same time, you're seeing both, you know, you're able to go leverage the work of someone else by licensing the Unreal Engine and writing your own game, you and 3 other people. But if you want to go make the new engine at, you know, CD Projekt Red, you're joining a 500-person team. So it's really interesting time where you can get in at both levels, you know. But as far as how
Charles, what about you for in terms of where gaming's going and how that might lend itself to new opportunities for students to kind of see where careers are?
I think games are going everywhere. One thing that we're going to learn once we get the promise of 5G, I always say that with tongue in cheek, the promise of 5G, 1 gig up, 1 gig down. That's the upload and download speeds. Games are going into the cloud. If you look at currently Call of Duty, the latest Call of Duty game, if you buy all the DLC and get everything for that game, it will fill your hard drive up on a PS5 or Xbox One or Xbox Series X, and that's 500 gigabytes. And you just turned your console into a Call of Duty machine, and you're not playing any other games. So there's going to be a place in the cloud where all games are coming from being down through the cloud. And since our phones are powerful enough now, they're only going to get more powerful. Fortnite proved that we can go from one platform to the next platform. And eventually we're going to go into augmented reality glasses, headwear, glasses. That's ideally what we want, glasses and contact lenses, of course, and the better VR headsets that are lighter and move quicker. And the only way we can do that is to be directly connected to a cloud source where they're just beaming down the image, recording our actions and sending it up to the cloud. And actually it's one-to-one without as much lag time. And that's the hard equation that everybody has to crack, is how do we create packets of data going up and coming downstream at the same time, and it feels like it's one-to-one. And I think that's going to be the big plan for over the next 2 to 3 years. And we may have to have artificial intelligence and machine learning play a big part of that, where the machine predicts what you're going to do because it knows how you play the game, and it's already feeding data on the commands. And when you do it, they just validate it. Okay, they did this. They didn't do anything unusual. Charles always dodges to the right. So when he's dodging right now in his VR headset, he's going to dodge to the right because that's what he does. And it's just that smart. And I think that's where it's going to lead us to. And then we're going to see that implemented across all things. For instance, getting directions. We know Charles doesn't pay attention when he's listening to this one song. So we got to put the arrows really up into his face and make a ding noise. Oh, he's talking to somebody in the car. So we have to put it in their voice to communicate with him. Oh, he's about to move the turn. Oh, he's about to fall in somebody else's lane. I mean, Tesla has proved that autopilot does work, and it's only going to get better. The whole point of autopilot is the car doesn't just drive you, the car is actually learning. That's the more important system of the auto drive, is the cars are constantly learning from one another, and that data is being stored and shared between all the cars from that line of cars. And Tesla, according to Tesla, they're going to share all of that data with anybody with automated cars. Automated cars are a really hard thing to do. Once we figure that out, we cracked a lot of eggs once we figured that out, with machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Well, sorry, Charles, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Well, you both bring up really interesting points about how technology, not only are you both using it, but some of the basic technology with autonomous vehicles and rocketry is really also some of the basic stuff of game design. I mean, it is programming, it is coding, and students can really kind of embrace their love of learning how to create a game, learning how to create artificial intelligence, which then can power so many other technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I tell everybody, I tell every student, we play games all day long. We wake up playing a game. The moment you hit that snooze bar, you put yourself in a time trial. I'm going to sleep in an extra 10 minutes. Can I get all the things I need done before I walk out the door? You're playing a game. And you're thinking about how you're going to do it all the same way.
Right.
Okay, I usually take 10 minutes for a shower. I got to take 5 minutes for the shower. Now I got to do this, and I got to put on my clothes. This is what I'm going to wear. You're playing a time trial. You're trying to get out the same time with less time. That's the first game we all play every day.
In a lot of ways, we're playing a game all day long. So one stat I always find interesting is high school students that identify themselves as gamers are 3 times more likely to major in a STEM field in college. And I think that's really exciting because a lot of people think just because you're a gamer, you have no ambition, and you are just kind of going through the motions. But in fact, as we just talked about, there's a lot of similarities to playing a game and how they can correlate that to getting into STEM fields using technology in real world applications. You are two great examples of how you grew up playing video games. You really had a curiosity for how the games were made. And then, of course, use them in a technology standpoint in what you're doing today. So question I had for both of you is, I'm sure there's a lot of parents going to be listening to this panel. What advice would you give those parents thinking, how do I get my child, they play video games, how do I get them excited and encouraged to think about STEM fields and the correlation between video gaming and STEM?
One of the things I used to do when I played a video game is actually review the game and used to send it to EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly. In my 12-year-old mind, I thought I was the world's greatest writer of video games, and I knew everything about the game I just played. So I would tell parents, stop attacking your children when they fail, because if they're gamers, they realize the only way I truly fail is when I quit. And I got to keep going at it. I'm going to figure it out. They just need time to figure it out. Not everybody learns the same way. If anybody that plays the Souls games knows that you want to rage quit every 5 seconds in one of those games. And the game doesn't cheat you, which is beautiful. That's one series of games where they don't cheat you. And you just have to figure it out, the patterns. You got to read the patterns. I grew up on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, so I knew how difficult games could be and how many times I had to get back to him to try to fight him, to beat him again. And I had to figure out the pattern. And it's just, that's what parents need to allow your kids, teach them that failure is not a bad thing. Quitting is. And they need to keep going and keep trying to do it and push them towards something they love. There's a million things for them to do in gaming. Game industry is a whole ecosystem. You can do marketing, you can do co-writing, you can do copywriting. I mean, you can do narrative writing. There's a million things you can do in gaming. You don't just have to program. You don't have to just do art or be a producer or a designer. There's thousands of fields for you to belong in. You can find your space, find your tribe.
Well, as you said, these AAA titles, it takes upwards of 500 to 1,000 people to create it. It's almost like a movie. A lot of people don't realize the production value that goes into making a top game. We take it for granted because top games look like a movie. They really embrace. They really, it's very interactive. You get kind of sucked into the world, and every little pixel, everything is designed and written in a way, and that takes talent. Hundreds and hundreds of people behind each game. So, Michael, what about you? What would you suggest for parents who are kind of thinking, well, I know my children love playing video games, but how do I encourage them to really think about this from a career perspective? Kind of taking what a little personal note from yourself.
Well, as a new parent myself, you can probably hear my kid crying behind me. I think about this quite a bit. The good news is, it has never been a better time in history than right now to give your child access to just stuff that, he and I would have dreamed to have. Like, you can buy a Raspberry Pi computer for $30 and you can just hand it to your kid. It's like, here's an entire computer. You can do whatever you want with it, right? Here's a bunch of parts I bought for $150 or some some amount of money that could be a little, could be a lot. You can set your kid up with an entire kit to explore all of these different things. And that's the nice thing. Like, we have a lot of access to resources. We have a tremendous access to information too. So what do I suggest to get your kid along STEM lines if that's what they like? And also, and let's go ahead and pull this back for a second too. So I started out in visual effects. I started out making movies. I was in what's called the technical director field, where I would, design simulation systems for the movie, but in the end, I'd have to produce a shot for like a movie like 2012 or for How to Train Your Dragon. I had to produce a frame of video for, the people to watch on the artistic side. But I also do the technical side too. So if your kid is, artistically inclined or, a leader, natural or whatever, like encourage those kind of things. And you can always give, your child a resource. The resources are so cheap right now. Like stuff is so cheap.
Yeah.
Computers are cheap. Like and the thing is, the one thing I will say is the more they can play around at that low level, like your Raspberry Pi, you might not know what this is, but Google like a Raspberry Pi or Arduino, whatever, that kind of stuff. The closer they are to these things aren't that great at teaching. Like they have a lot of information in them, but you can't really play them quite as much as the Commodore 64 or the VIC-20, right? But the modern version of that is available for way cheaper than what we had, and you can give your kid that, and they can have the whole thing. And if they want to just play on the cell phone, that's fine. But like having them understand like how to write Python. Python is the easiest language on earth to learn right now, right? And it gives you so much power. I
It's
write
very
Python.
powerful. Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Very
And
powerful.
yeah. So learn Python, and you've guaranteed yourself a job.
Yeah, and you can learn
That's so true.
Python via YouTube University. Just go to YouTube. There's some of the world's greatest minds are on YouTube, and they're willing to give it information for free.
Yeah, you're both right. It's incredible how the access to information and technology is there, whether free or very little cost. And this can really engage and interact a student and get them excited to want to at least continue learning about those fields. And listen,
Do you mind if I throw a very specific shout out to a very specific type of person in the audience?
Please.
Okay. So this is for you, kid who's not doing too hot in school, or your parents who are worried about your child getting D's and C's. I'm a D and C student. I dropped out of college. I've been terrifically successful in my life. The reason why is because I was not scholastically effective. If your kid's really good at school and they're really great at school, that's great. Be good at school. But if all is not lost, if you're just not doing it, if you find what you love and you do that, then that will take you where you need to go. And if it's in that Raspberry Pi or writing Python or drawing in your sketchbook, that'll take you where you need to go. But I just want to make sure that, I'm not saying that people can slack. It's not what I'm saying at all.
No.
But if it just ain't happening, like I'm a college dropout,
Find your tribe.
Yeah.
To back what Michael said, my brother was the same way. He ended up getting his associate's degree in robotics. He was great at robotics. Horrible through high school. He's my older brother. And my parents just wanted us to make A's and B's. My brother brought a C home. They're throwing a party for him. They're like, oh my God, he got a C. That's great. He just didn't care for school, but he took some robotic classes in vocational school while he was in high school and loved it. And he became Toyota's lead robotic engineer. And now he's the general manager of a whole entire plant in Mississippi. And he's Kaizen'd 147 robots. And that was his tribe. That's his groove. He fell in love with it. And my parents were worried there for a minute. And they're like, oh, he likes robots. And you, like my father said, you can't turn a sycamore tree into a pine tree. And so you can't force your children to do what you want them to do. Find out what they're really good at and push them towards it, and find careers in what they're really good at. We're all different. We're all different. We're all dirty computers, and we're all different.
They both make excellent points about how students are approaching things differently and also just find their groove. And I could talk for hours about this because you guys are two good examples of how gaming early on inspired you in different paths, and you both are changing the world in your own way. So Michael, Charles, again, thank you for your time. I'm going to close out here because I also know we are kind of getting towards the end of the panel. I want to thank you guys again for joining me on this panel and talking about how careers and STEM can work with video gaming and esports. But in speaking of esports, I do want to also just do a shout out to the City of STEM Esports High School Tournament. It is currently having team enrollment. Team enrollment ends on Monday, April 12th at 6 o'clock. It's open to all high school students in LA County. Teams of 5 students can sign up. the winning school, you can have multiple teams per school, by the way. The winning school gets $500 in computer supplies, in addition to the trophies that the teams are going to win. So it's an exciting opportunity for students to rally and collaborate and engage to compete against other schools, but it's also a chance to have some school pride and win some money for your school. So you can check everything out by going to the cityofstem.org. There's a link to the tournament there, or you can go to highschoolgg/cityofstem. Either way, you can get to the registration page and learn more about the tournament. So again, gentlemen, thank you for your time. I hope you all that are watching this panel learned a little bit more about how video games and STEM are highly connected, and there's tremendous opportunities for jobs in the future if there is a gamer in your world that wants to understand what they can do in life. It's really exciting. So again, thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.
Hello, and now I know the key to it all. Learn Python. That was a terrific panel discussion from Alan, Charles, and Michael. I learned a whole heck of a lot. Frankly, gave me a little bit of comfort. I have college-age kids myself who love to game, and sometimes wonder, what are they going to do with that? Now I know. That's the fun of doing these sorts of programs. So remember, high schoolers, the tournament, the esports tournament for City of STEM starts on April 17th. Registration closes April 12th at 6 p.m. So get your teams together and register, and visit our website, cityofstem.org, for more information. And as they noted in the panel, it's not just gaming, it's building teamwork, it's critical thinking skills, it is all of those soft and technical skills that are going to get you that great STEM job. On the website, we also have an innovation challenge for middle school students. Let's learn a little bit more about that challenge. I think we've got a video coming up.
The 2021 City of STEM Innovation Challenge Sustainable Solutions is calling all Los Angeles County middle school students to help create a more sustainable LA. LA is the city of champions, but even champions face challenges like wildfires, traffic, and air quality. But bold solutions can come from anywhere, and we want to hear from you. Entering to win is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Gather a team of 1 to 5 students from your school and create an idea for a more sustainable Los Angeles. 2. Create a 2-minute video that identifies the problem, the solution, and the potential impact for Los Angeles. Be sure to include the STEM needed to develop the solution. 3. Ask your parent to complete registration and video submission at cityofstem.org/innovation-challenge. The grand prize team will spend a day touring Los Angeles' top tech companies and will present their winning idea to STEM influencers, including me, Allie Ward, science communicator and host of Did I Mention Invention on the CW. LA needs your ideas to bring about a more sustainable future. Don't delay. Get started today.
I did not imagine that I would ever say I wish I was a middle schooler again, but seeing that amazing innovation challenge, I really wish I was. I know we're going to get some fantastic ideas out of you folks. So sign up, get cracking and create a team. Okay, reason number 3 why STEM jobs are awesome. Your work, it's always changing. It is never, ever boring. Technology never stops disrupting. Science is a pursuit, so they're always chasing the answer. Math roots might go as far back as Pythagoras, but they're still solving equations. There's still stuff out there that hasn't been answered. So if you're curious and like to be on the cutting edge, STEM is your field. Up next, we have a panel of students, alumni, faculty, and friends of DeVry University here with us to talk about what's inspired them to pursue their STEM-related careers and what they're recommending for young people and families of young people in exploring great careers out there in technology, software programming, systems design, testing, and more. Faculty member Dr. Nazila Safavi and Long Beach Center Dean Laura Knapp will be leading this interactive panel, and we encourage the audience to ask questions, so use that chat. They're live and they're ready for you. And I think DeVry is ready to come up, but if not, I have some follow-on to the last panel. I was doing a little bit of digging as to what it pays to be a game designer. Average salary, $66,088. To be a virtual reality developer, $77,675. Now remember, this is average, math majors. There's stuff on either side, less and more, but this is about in the middle. How about being an e-sports player and going pro? $74,000 is an average salary. So when the folks, Charles and Mike, were talking about starting early and getting that Raspberry Pi and learning how to code, it is really setting you up for a terrific career. And these are the careers that moms and dads, we would have never imagined. And it is so wonderful to be here in the city of STEM, where the industry is so strong. In addition, I did a little research on the hot STEM careers that are coming out of COVID and on tap for 2021, listing medical and health, statistics, data scientist, software developer, AI specialist, something called a strategy-minded software developer, and then a business-focused data specialist, data engineers, cybersecurity, and cloud architects. Now, think about it. I mean, I haven't been at work in my office in over a year. I live in the cloud. And if you think about how much I'm spending on my Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video, all of that virtual content that's being created, I'm consuming. There's a market for it. So COVID has absolutely really just heated up the fire for STEM careers. And now is a terrific time, if you're in high school or even younger, to be thinking about these careers that are on the horizon. And a place to consider training for that career is DeVry University. And the folks at DeVry have an amazing array of certificate programs as well as degree programs. And the Dean, Laura Knapp, I'll admit, she and I both went to college together, so I have some inside info onto how amazing their classes, their faculty, and their students are. I believe you're going to be hearing from a cybersecurity specialist. And if there's one career pathway that is just blowing up these days, it's cybersecurity. And we need cybersecurity, in a small organization like mine. I mean, I've got my data on the web and I want to make sure that it's not hacked. And huge places like the city of Downey, where I'm in, where payroll and systems and infrastructure all connect through the cloud. Being a cybersecurity expert at that level, there is a lot of impact riding on you. And let's see, other tidbits that I can share with you. Well, I'm getting something in my magic ear, folks. No, not yet. Also doing in my research in terms of hot STEM careers. The Holy Grail, and this may not be for early entry high school students, but you know, where you start in your career is not where you end. You may be thinking about an engineering degree or a computer science degree or an environmental or marine biology degree, but what's going to really take you forward is the people skills. They say the holy grail of STEM careers and paying more than $150,000 on average is an IT director with people skills who can motivate and lead. So don't forget the value of we English majors who I wouldn't necessarily qualify myself as in a STEM field, but by golly, learning how to, okay, we're going old school. DeVry is ready to go, and hopefully I filled the space up with a little bit of useful information. Let's hear it for DeVry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for attending today's City of STEM Career Day and the DeVry University Career Panel. We are so excited to be here today with you. We have an excellent group comprised of students, alumni, faculty, and friends, and we'll be discussing their particular journeys in technology, right? In their careers through technology and engineering, what their influences were, what inspired them, what their advice is to anyone considering similar pathways in STEM and in technology and engineering. My name is Laura Knapp. I'm the Center Dean at DeVry University in Long Beach. I always like to say that there are so many STEM-related career pathways, so many roads that we may never even have heard of under the umbrella of technology. And so I'm always really delighted to help raise awareness around some of those specific careers, right? And I think the best way to do that is by introducing folks that are in those careers to you directly. So we have a lot of questions prepared for our panelists just to draw out some of their insights, some of their background, and again, some of their advice for anyone considering a similar career. By the way, for our remote audience, we're happy to field your questions. If you have any questions, feel free to just type them into the YouTube chat and we'll tackle those as we go, right? Time permitting. I'd like to go ahead and kick us off by having us all introduce ourselves, starting with our faculty. So we'll start with Dr. Nazila Safavi. Dr. Safavi, thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm an associate professor of business, electrical engineering, and information technology at DeVry University, the Long Beach campus. My background is also in the industry. I have industry background. I love teaching. And I love helping students learn the foundations and concepts that are important to a number of different fields in engineering and technology. Thank you, Dinla.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Safavi. We're so glad to have you here today. And just thanks for all you do with our students. And we appreciate you being here. Next up, we do have alumna Alicia Lucas. DeVry alumna Alicia, welcome.
Thank you, Dean Laura. Again, I'm Alicia Lucas. I'm a director at MobileNet Services and an alumni. I graduated from DeVry in 2000 with a bachelor's in telecommunications engineering. I also graduated with my MBA from Keller Graduate School of Management in 2012. 20 years ago, I started my career as a field engineer for Nortel Networks, and since then, I've been a strong advocate for women in tech and girls studying STEM through the nonprofit Chick Tech. Thanks, Laura.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Alicia. Thanks for joining us. Next up is another DeVry alumnus. We have Eric Fletcher with us today. Eric?
Hey everybody, my name is Eric Fletcher, and I currently work for the City of Los Angeles. And my role there is Cyber Intrusion Response Team Manager, which just basically means that I find and detect the bad guys and handle them. I am a graduate of DeVry. I graduated DeVry in 2001 with a BS in Computer Information Systems, and I currently hold a master's in cybersecurity engineering from SANS Technology Institute. I have also taught Intro to Cyber at UCLA, and I'm currently teaching at Kingsland University. So I enjoy teaching as well, and you don't have to have a long background technology to learn this field. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to talking to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Eric. We're delighted to have you here. Next up, we have David Palmer, who is both, I guess you fit two categories. David, you're both an alumnus of DeVry and a current student at Keller, is that correct?
Yes. So currently working as a system test engineer for Northrop Grumman. Just recently got hired on and into industry with them. Still pursuing my master's degree in IT network communications management, and then graduated in 2019 with my undergrad in computer engineering technology. Prior to all of that, I was in the Army for a little over 5 years. And so it's really nice that, now I get to help work on those vehicles and that technology that I was actually using in the Army. And currently actually just got inducted into the National Society of Leadership and Success and an active member in the IEEE. And I actually, in my undergrad during my senior project, I won the IEEE contest at the Global Humanitarian Conference. We won the People's Choice Award, me and my team. So definitely excited to talk about the STEM and all the possibilities that can happen with it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, David. You're an example of a student who just is kind of involved in everything and has been very, very much involved. I think like all of, our current students here and alumni as well. So thank you. We're glad to have you here with us. And next up, we have Mr. Joseph Simpson, who is a current student, but soon to be, right? Very soon to be graduate of DeVry. So Joseph, please introduce yourself.
How you doing, guys? My name is Joseph Jr. I'm currently a senior at DeVry University that's on track to receive my Bachelor's of Science degree in Computer Information Systems while specializing in software programming. I'm a second generation computer geek, better known as a swag nerd. That's on the Dean's List. I'm also the president of the IEEE Robotics Club at the DeVry Long Beach location. I'm a member of the National Society Leadership and Success with a 4.0 GPA. And when it comes to technology, I believe that the children are the future, and helping them get familiar with IoT, which is the Internet of Things, has always been my lifelong mission. So I always encourage kids to learn cybersecurity, like Brother Eric down here, learn programming like I do, learn how to play with drones right here. And also my favorite, guys, learn robotics right here.
Oh my gosh, how fun.
Thank you.
How fun. Next time, yeah, we're going to do a demo. We're going to do a robotics demo for sure. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. Wow, you're such a good advocate,
Absolutely.
I always say, for STEM and programming and computer information systems. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next up, we have a friend of DeVry, let's say. And with us, Mr. Bhaskara Ralabandi, a friend, we call him a friend from industry. So, Bhaskara, welcome to the panel.
Sure.
Please introduce yourself. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, and thank you, Dr. Nazila Safawi, for extending the invitation. I'm glad to be part of this discussion. And Dr. Nazila Safawi was our professor at National University. I did my master's in wireless and telecommunications back in 2007. And I did my bachelor's and diploma in electronics and communications from India. And currently I'm working as a senior manager at Samsung Network Division, and especially for the 5G, cloud network, cloud computing technology division. And yeah, I'm looking forward, talking to you all and helping in the guys who are in STEM, right? And talking more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Bhaskara. Really appreciate your presence here today as well. I think we have just a wonderful panel assembled. We're just going to kick off questions, right? We have a couple of questions assembled. Again, we'll take questions from the audience, but we do have a couple of things prepared that Dr. Nazila Safavi will kind of guide us through. So I guess, Dr. Safavi, the floor is yours.
Thanks again. Thanks. Bhaskara, thanks again for joining us and everyone else. So I'm very excited to see, especially to see everybody, especially the IEEE people, because we have launched our IEEE robotic team late last year, and we've been doing a lot of extensive and interesting and exciting work around with the students and faculty and advisors together. So I see a lot of faces, and I'm glad to see you. So yeah, my first question is going to be around inspirations, and I've been very interested to know what inspired you all and what got you started along this journey toward your careers from, as I could hear, telecommunications, engineering, electronics, testing, cybersecurity. What was the motivation and how did it start for you? I'd like to start with Alicia, please.
Hi, yes. So, when I think about my youth and what kind of inspired me to go into a tech career, two things really kind of come to mind. The first one is PBS, right? Everybody's favorite station, the public broadcasting station. PBS was my first exposure to the sciences, to technology, to engineering. And I think most importantly, a lot of the programming showed women in these careers. There was women researchers, women engineers. And so when I was considering going into technology, I did not see a roadblock. I really saw an open road that had been paved by other women before me. And I really want to, I really believe that PBS had influenced me in that way. The second factor, I think, was playing sports. To this day, I developed so many characteristics playing sports that I use in my everyday. I started playing softball when I was 10 years old, and in high school, I also played volleyball and ran track. And I think you really develop a lot of different skills and get a lot of different experiences playing sports that carry on into your adulthood and then later into your careers.
Great, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. Definitely, I can see the relationship between being successful in sports and being successful in other aspects of life.
Absolutely.
Yes, so I'd like to hear from all of you. How about Bhaskara, would you like to share your story with us, please? Bhaskara, do you have a good connection? Can you share your story?
Sure. I just got disconnected and connected back. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, sure. So as I did, as I said, I did my master's here, but my bachelor's from India, and my diploma before that, diploma in electronics and communications from India, one of the Polytechnic college, right? And when I'm doing my Polytechnic back in 1999, so we have very few guidance, like, on the career, which path to choose, like, because we have a lot of streams. Like in STEM, we have multiple disciplines, like, we have mechanical, civil, electronics, communications, and you have computer science, information technology. So it's all about, like, the guidance, like, I got a good guidance, like, some of the friends who are already, leading their career in communications and computer industry. And I have taken electronics and communications as a bachelor's, and I enjoyed my course. And I came here for master's, and I did master's from National University. And every time, like, technology is evolving, right? And after I joined my first job, I still want to be more academic. So I have taken some courses from MIT, some courses from Stanford, which are continuation courses, right? And I have recently taken, like last year, from University of Dallas, right, a course. So I just want to be associated with academic and more to learn, right? And similarly, so that's what exactly I see, like, and my advice to the STEM also, like, be, because technology is evolving, you have to be continuous learning never stop, right? And it's a continuous learning. And there are new tools, new processes, new technologies are coming, and we need to just keep up ourselves what is required for us, as well as the career to pursue, like, your dreams. So yeah, thanks for all my professors and well-wishers who provided a great guidance, for my travel in the STEM, right? And I think I got great people around me, and definitely, like, that's what I can, share.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that with us, Bhaskara. How about we turn the table to Joseph and have you tell us your story, please. Joseph, you're muted.
Yeah, the sound broke up, so I didn't hear you say Joseph. So what got me started in computers, once again, like I said, I'm a second generation computer guy. My father, he was in the computer space for over 35 years. He graduated from LA Trade Tech, and he ended up working as a computer operator. And he actually worked for Princess Cruise. So I always tell this joke. My best friend, his last name was Walker, and I used to say his father was Johnny Walker. And he said my daddy was Isaac from the Love Boat because he worked at the Princess Cruise. So, so I, I always thought my father was a nerd and I was into sports. So, of course, I rebelled in the beginning of learning technology. But as I got older and I wanted to learn how to build websites and understand how certain things worked, of course, he was the first person I ran to. And of course, he was the first person that talked about me and said, if you would have been doing this when you was 10 years old, like I tried to teach you, you'd be a master right now. I said, okay, well, anyway, whatever. I'm learning now. And so, he was a great push for me to get me involved in technology. And I also have a friend who's also in the chat right now, which is Eric, who was the person who told me, once I wanted to go back to school, the school I needed to go back to was DeVry. And everything he told me and said has been right on point. So as far as DeVry, I think it's a fantastic location to learn technology. And if these kids really want to learn how to do this stuff, DeVry is the best place to go, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So now that you referenced Eric, we'll have
You're welcome.
Eric tell us his story. Eric, can you share with us your story? Thank you.
Sure. So it's funny. My story is kind of like Joe's in reverse in a way. So what do I mean by that? So like when I grew up in the early '80s. That's when I was a kid. And that was like the dawn of video games. You know what I mean? Like personal computing and video games. So video games is really what got me into computers. Period. There was this one game, Donkey Kong, and you guys probably don't even know about that game anymore, but it's a classic. It's an 8-bit classic, and that game just got me into technology. So I begged my dad, and I was like, I really want a computer, because I want to create games myself, right? So after a little begging, he got me an actual computer. My first computer was a Commodore VIC-20. It was like you know, it has no power compared to the computers of today. But you know, that's basically what got me started. You know, I would spend hours literally on that computer. You know, programming and you know, creating games on there. You know, it was a lot of fun for me. You know, one summer I spent so much time on it. My grandfather, you know, he was watching me. He was like, you know, you need to get off the computer and go outside for a little while. You know, so that was just, you know, my way of. It was just, I just had like a strong affinity for it. You know, and then that carried on throughout the years on into high school. And I said my story in reverse because, you know, when I got to high school, it's not as cool to be, you know, into computers and stuff. You know, so I kind of, you know, still did it on the sly or undercover, and I played football and things like that. But I continued my after I snapped out of that, I continued and got a degree in computer information systems from DeVry. And you know, I lived in the lab. You know, that was my life for a very long time. You know, you will learn what you need to learn if you are, you know, interested in like STEM centric types of fields, like, you know, information technology or cybersecurity and engineering, all those types of things. So anywho, I mean, that's just kind of how I got started with video games. I wanted to be a software developer, and you know, I learned a lot of program languages as a result of that. So that's my story.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Eric. Wonderful story. Now, how about David? Could you share that with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. My story is a little similar to everyone's, I think. A couple of things that got me into it. Gaming definitely was one of them. Before they had Fortnite and Call of Duty and all these things where you have a network connecting everyone together, you had good old Doom. And if you wanted to play Doom with other people, you had to set up a local area network with multiple computers. And if you didn't know what you were doing, you were going to figure it out if you wanted to play. And I remember doing that with my uncles. And like you guys were saying, I before I got into high school, I dabbled in some video games, got into that online play with Warcraft, and then started playing sports, and it wasn't quite so cool. Found so that's the first way, right? Doom, setting up networks that way. And then when I got into the Army, my job was to talk to aircraft and talk to artillery and kind of tell them where we want them to either illuminate or smoke or drop some sort of explosive. And, you know, you look at the old movies and it's a cannon that just shoots a big hunk of metal out. And when I was in, I'm learning that there's a whole computer network that connects the artillery piece to the aircraft, to the missiles, and everything is connected and working together. And it's not that old system anymore. And so I knew that I wasn't going to stay in the Army, and getting out, moving into something technical wasn't really, you know, it seemed like the best idea. That seems where everything's going. Somebody mentioned the Internet of Things. It seems like, you know, everything has some sort of network connected to it. Your refrigerator, your oven now, everything can connect to the internet. So that's definitely what pushed me to get into the industry.
Great. Thank you, David. Very interesting story. Knowing our audience today are youth and their families, I'd like Eric to tell us, as a father, what do you recommend to young people today who might be deciding their future careers?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, I'm a father of 6, so I've got kids from, you know, all ranges, from young adults to, you know, teens. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the 80s where, you know, not everybody had a computer first off, and no one had mobile phones, right? So it was a whole different sort of scene where, you know, compared to today, you know, you guys are growing up like in an environment where there's technology everywhere, you know. TV, you know, there's not we had like maybe 1 or 2 TVs here and there. Now there's a TV in every room, and you got your mobile phone. So some of the advice I like to give as it relates to just social media, um, particularly is, be aware of how everything that you do on social media, it has permanency. It doesn't go anywhere. Just because you press delete doesn't mean that it's gone. You may have heard that before, but that's real. Part of what I do in some of my projects that I do for businesses is I do something called open source intelligence. And open source intelligence basically is combing the internet, social media for publicly available data. And you'd be surprised how much of your data is actually out there. So I would just say I'm not saying to get off of social media, but I would say that be mindful that, as you're maturing and going into maybe, college or high school or what have you, and on into adult life, that these things will follow you. And you probably want to have a fun social media account and a professional social media account, just to kind of um, um, keep yourself on the right track in terms of career, right? Because a lot of employers will also use social media to decide whether or not they want to hire or not. Even some schools look at that in terms of admission, so it's just something to be aware of. The other thing I would say is that I recommend, like, all of my kids have been exposed to a programming language. I think it's vital for every child growing up in this digital environment to know at least one programming language. The reason I say that is because there's so much connectivity, and what powers this connectivity is software. And we need people who are going to be able to communicate to these different devices. We've been talking about Internet of Things. I mean, there's so much more on the rise. I mean, you guys are growing up in a generation where you're going to have self-driving cars soon. Who's going to be the engineers and software developers that program them? You guys are right here, poised, at the precipice to actually be those people who are going to be forwarding that kind of technology. So all that has to do with programming, So I suggest that everyone have at least one language that they understand, and I would suggest Python or Go language. So that's some of what I would recommend, to the young folks who are looking to get into like a STEM-centric kind of field, or just advice in general as it relates, because like I said, I have the information or cybersecurity background. You probably know that better. And it's amazing some of the things that I see. So it's just kind of like, I'm really excited for you guys because of all the technology, but also kind of like, want to make sure you're properly guarded, as you're navigating this new sort of environment, So that's what I would say. And I'd be glad to take any follow-up questions or what have you.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was very interesting. I was telling the other day in a cybersecurity lecture that it's almost like going to a party and not going to the party at all because you're going to miss out on all the fun. Right. So you're going to the party, you go to the party, but take all the precautions. So
absolutely.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Eric. How about Alicia? I heard you were talking about how playing sports prepared you to be successful. May you please elaborate on that?
Sure. So in high school, I was a bit of a jock. I was an all-state softball player. I was an all-league volleyball player, and I broke 2 records in track. And I really feel like all of that combined, all of those experiences built up a confidence in me to take on new challenges. When I was a field engineer at Nortel, it was working with 99% men in the field with my toolbox, my hard hat, and my steel toes. And I was out there just like one of the guys, and I worked just as hard, if not harder. And I really feel that sports kind of built that toughness, that goal setting, that challenging yourself in a physical way. and along with that, and using your brain, because there's a lot of strategy that comes with playing sports. There's a lot of leadership that you learn in sports, and there's a lot of collaboration. I played team sports, which teaches you, you got to be strength to weaknesses, and you have to encourage people, you have to teach, you have to share. But I think most importantly, sports really teaches you that you don't always win. And when you have a career in industry, like I've been in my industry, the wireless industry, for 20 years, you really do see some ups and downs. We've had, great success and then layoffs. And I feel that learning that winning is not everything really kind of comes into play when you see your fellow coworkers sometimes get laid off. And then all of a sudden it's a great year the next year. So I encourage all parents that may be listening to let your kids play sports, because there's a lot of experiences that carry throughout their whole entire life.
Such a good message and such fantastic messages just about sportsmanship and about, it never being the wrong time either. Oh my gosh, Joseph, the fact that you kind of dove in after the fact, rebelling, from your background, your heritage in IT. My gosh, David coming in after the Army, to study technology. I mean, Alicia, just your success, kind of on the field, off the field, and bringing what you learned from sports into it. And oh my gosh, Eric, just your insights as a father, right? And also the fact that those video games, playing those video games, can lead to just that thirst for programming, right? And solving problems and winning and getting to the solution quickly. And I think it's a good influence that we're seeing. And oh my gosh, Bhaskara, thank you so much for sharing, your background, which is different, right, from all the rest. Such a diverse, and knowledgeable panel. I wish we had like another hour to keep going. In fact, I think we're just hitting our stride right now. That said, I think we are up on time. Are there any questions? I can check for questions on the chat. Yep, quickly. We may have to follow up on those questions afterwards. I would like to thank our audience actually for joining and listening in on this DeVry Career Panel. Hopefully we have been able to shed some light on some career paths that aren't maybe household names, right? To be a telecommunications engineer or what have you, or a systems engineer, a test engineer, or cybersecurity person. Hopefully we have been able to shed some light on the influences, the inspirations, and kind of, what it takes to get, hands-on in any one of these fields. If you have questions for us, any follow-up questions from the audience, I would encourage you to call us at our campus, 562-427-0861. You know where to find us. We're in Long Beach. We're the DeVry University campus right there. And once again, I am Laura Knapp, the Center Dean. I wanted to thank also Dr. Nazila Safavi for moderating our panel today. And I think we are up on time. City of STEM, I think you would agree. Thank you so much once again to everyone.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, DeVry. What a terrific panel. And yet another plug for Python. Wonderful stories. Thank you, Laura and team. Okay, I'm on to reason number 4 why STEM careers are awesome. They want you. Every year, 500,000 STEM jobs go unfilled. And by 2025, STEM jobs in manufacturing alone are expected to increase by 3.5 million. There is some serious job security in STEM. COVID as well has been a huge boost for STEM talent in healthcare, pharma, as well as anything that is virtual or cloud related. Ask the folks who invested in Zoom. STEM solutions also need to work for everyone. So there's a huge demand for talent, women in STEM, minorities in STEM, and people from all around the globe in STEM. Okay, so up next, we will be visiting the Roundhouse Aquarium in Manhattan Beach. Now, last year in November, Juan Lopez toured us around the aquarium and we got to meet Octavia the octopus. Today, we're going to have the chance to learn about the career of an aquarist, their tools of the trade, and how they manage to train, manage, maintain, and care for aquatic animals. Are we ready to dive in? Maybe not.
Hi, everybody. Well, welcome to the City of STEM, or thank you for having me part of City of STEM. My name is Juan Lopez. I'm the education coordinator here at the Roundhouse Aquarium, where I'm coming to you guys live. The Roundhouse Aquarium Teaching Center in Manhattan Beach, California. Now, at this point, you probably met some really, really cool people, really, really cool scientists, and you've learned that they come in many different forms. There are scientists that study rocks and stars in space. There are scientists that study rocks and stars in the ocean. There are scientists who wear lab coats, and some scientists even wear sandals. But today, I'm going to take you guys on a short, kind of behind the scenes tour of our aquarium here in Manhattan Beach. And instead of just focusing on animals, don't worry, you'll get to see some of that. We're also going to be focusing on the scientists that work here in the aquarium. Now, there's many different names to different types of scientists and their jobs. The aquarium scientists are called aquarists. The word is aquarists. These are people who are trained and studied on how to work with animals, from fish to mussels to eels, octopus, sea stars, sea cucumbers. You name it, if it lives in the ocean, they probably have learned and worked with them before. Now, these aquarists are the people who are working behind the scenes to keep our animals healthy, happy, the tank systems running strong. If you've ever been to an aquarium and you've seen some really, really cool animals and were inspired to love the ocean, hopefully that's a thing for you guys. You can thank aquarists around the world and in here in Manhattan Beach for keeping our animals healthy and happy. Uh, because we're on a short time frame here, we're not going to get too deep into the world of aquarists. Just a small couple things that we do on a daily basis. If you have any pet fish at home or aquatic animals, freshwater turtles like red ear sliders, mud skippers, toads, frogs, amphibians. There goes our leopard shark Lucy. Um, she's pretty cool. We'll talk a little bit more about her if we had a chance. You're probably an aquarist at home already. Now, the first part of our tour here, we're going to talk about a couple tools of the trade. You might have some of these laying around at home. And then the second part, we're going to walk around the aquarium and show you guys some animals that the aquarists love to work with. You might find them really cool as well. Now, I've got a couple things laid out here on my table that you don't see, and I'm going to show you them and talk about why we do some things here at the aquarium and why it's a good idea. You might want to do it at home if you have fish tanks at home. Now, if you've gone to the beach recently, I know LAUSD has just came back from their spring break. Some of you probably went to the beach, probably dipped your little toesies in the water. Might have noticed it's a little bit chilly. Now, temperature is a big, important aspect or part of maintaining or keeping animals in water very healthy and happy. If you walk around our beaches here in Southern California, our water's pretty cold throughout most of the year. In our aquarium, we like to replicate that. Most of the tanks that I'll show you, including the big one behind me, it's usually sitting around 55, 56, nowhere, maybe inching towards 60 degrees Fahrenheit, but really we try to keep it mid to high 50s. And that's really, really important. We have cold water animals. If the water was to get really, really warm, even just a degree Fahrenheit over 60, some of these animals might start to feel a little bit sick, they might start to feel a little bit off. The big fancy word is lethargic. They might start to be a little bit slower. Now, most fish spend a lot of time swimming around in circles. One uh, big sign that the animals might be not feeling so hot or so well is that they're doing a behavior that you're not used to seeing the animals do. Like the Pacific mackerel over here, they're usually swimming around in a small school or a small group. If I was to come into this aquarium and see that some of them are sitting on top of the rock, that's going to throw some red flags. They're usually swimming around in circles. So one of the things we use to check temperature is something called a thermometer. You've probably seen and used thermometers. Don't know why it's rocket science. It's not rocket science. Here's a thermometer. Many different shapes and sizes. We stick this one in the water, and then we go off of the digital scale here. Another thing we use to check the temperature is a thermometer gun or laser thermometer laser thingy. Laser thermometer thing. But we point, press a button, and then the digital screen tells us what the surface of the temperature of the water is, and then we'll cross-reference that with our other guides. When we go behind the scenes, I'll show you a third way we check temperature in our tanks. It's a lot easier, a lot cooler. But another tool to trade is a scrubbing pad. If you've ever gone to an aquarium, it happens a lot here because we have big windows. Something grows on the glass. It's usually greenish, brownish, or sometimes reddish. It's something called algae. Oh, algae, however you want to pronounce it. And it's pretty much a photosynthesizing organism. It's kind of like a plant, but it lives in the water. And it grows pretty much everywhere. You can see a couple of it on our rocks. There's seaweed, one of the largest forms of algae. But sometimes the algae growth happens on the glass, and it kind of makes it hard to see some of our cool animals, like the Garibaldi, which is the California state fish. So sometimes we'll have to use a couple different scrubbing pads. This is just the first one I grabbed. Has a handle. You scrub, scrub, scrub on the inside, on the water side of the tank, and try to get some of that algae off so visitors can see the animals clearly. The algae growth isn't bad. It's perfectly fine. It's a natural thing. But it does get in the way when you're trying to take a cool selfie or trying to observe and learn about animals in our tanks. Again, there goes Lucy, our leopard shark. She's around 6 years old. She's a small leopard shark. They get their name from the spots and stripes. They're usually found in habitats called a kelp forest, an underwater forest. Instead of trees like the redwoods, it's the seaweed that you're used to probably seeing washed up on the beach, stinky, smelly, covered in kelp flies. But underwater, when the kelp is still in the ocean, it creates a wonderful, wonderful habitat for many animals. But anyways, onwards and onwards. The next thing we look at is something called salinity, how salty our water is. You might be scratching your head, Mr. Wan, that is a bit odd. Why do you have to measure salt in the salty ocean? Well, believe it or not, that's something that can affect our animals and their well-being or their health. This is called a hydrometer. There's many different ways to measure the salinity or the salt levels in the water. This is just a simple, quick way, easy, cheap way to do it. If you have a fish tank at home, a saltwater tank at home, this is an easy way you can check salinity. There's different markings and gauges. But the reason we check for salinity or how salty the water is, well, these are animals that rely on, that live in salt water. Believe it or not, if you took a saltwater animal, put it in fresh water, they can get sick, and that can potentially do some harm to their body. Vice versa, if you put a freshwater animal into salt water, that could also prove the same results. You don't want that. Too salty of a water, our saltwater animals, their livers start to not work so well, and then their bodies start to malfunction as well. Not salty enough, their balance is also thrown off. So that's one of the things we try to get into or try to check all the time. And the last tool of the trade, I just grabbed a little pamphlet here. It has a bunch of colors and gauges on it. Chemistry is involved in being part of an aquarius or learning how to maintain the water. This tank behind me holds over 1,400 or 1,400 gallons of salt water. Each of those one drop of water is a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen, molecules, chemistry. There's a balance being maintained here. If the chemical balance of our water is off, even by a little bit, it can cause some animals to get sick, and we don't want that. Some of the things that we are checking is something called potential of hydrogen, pH. You probably heard about this in some science classes, but pH regulates or looks at studies how acidic or basic or alkalinic the water is. To keep it really, really short, one of the things we're looking at here is the water staying at a healthy pH balance. I believe it's usually around the 8.0 area. Recently, because of climate change and whatnot, it's going up around 0.1. But that 0.1 is a big enough change to affect many species in the ocean. Too acidic of water can cause some animals' skin to not develop properly. Like our shark Lucy, she has special skin called dermal denticles, pretty much teeth for skin. They're hard, they're rough. It helps protect her against bumps and scrapes in the ocean. It helps protect her against germs and diseases. And it helps protect her against most of the predators that she has to face in the water. But with acidic water, it can make her skin very thin and brittle or easy to break, and that's no use for her. When we go to our tide pool tank, many of our animals have shells or exoskeletons. Too acidic of water, their shells and exoskeletons can also become thin and brittle and cause them to become weaker than they should be and maybe become easier potential prey for other predators. But again, we'll go ahead and show that off a little bit later. Now, that's pretty much, I guess the last tool of the trade is a rag. Even though you're about to see our very beautiful aquarium, we like to keep it prim and proper a lot. Aquaristing or aquaristry is a dirty job. You can be hand feeding sharks 1 minute and then elbow deep in fish poop another minute. So rags come in handy. I have one in my back pocket all day. I have one here. This is a special one, super, super soft microfiber. This is meant for wiping down tank glass so you don't scratch it. I have a more rougher one. This is really good at getting all that fish poop off of my hands. Luckily, that didn't work with that today. But anyways, so those are a couple tools of the trade. If you have a fish tank at home, make sure you're checking the temperature. Make sure you're cleaning it constantly on a regular basis to make sure your fish friends or your frog or turtle friends are happy. We're going to go ahead and take a look around the aquarium. I'm screwing you guys from my tripod. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the aquarium right now and check out some really cool animals that our aquarists love to work with. Where's Lucy? Lucy's there. So first tank here, this is our kelp forest tank. This is the Roundhouse Aquarium's largest tank. In here, we have the moray eel, California moray eel. They're really, really fun animals. They're really big and strong animals. This specific green one, this yellow-green one back here, they've been with the aquarium since the 70s. That's one of our oldest animals in the aquarium. They're over 50 years old, which is crazy. Now, as cute and cuddly as they are, they have a very, very strong bite. They have, I'm trying to get a good angle, it's hiding behind the kelp. They have something called a pharyngeal jaw. They have a second set of teeth further in their throat or their gullet. That second set of teeth, all right, come on, dude, you gotta work with me here. That second set of teeth help them move food down further into their body. It's when they swallow their food. But what's also really, really cool is that if you know how to work with them, We like to hand feed our moray eels from time to time because, well, I mean, we get really comfortable and really, really fine tuned working with our animals. We like to feed them our eels squid, anchovies, sometimes small mackerel. Really, really cool. I don't know where Lucy is gone. Oh, Lucy's coming up here. I know you guys must love sharks. Oh, she's down there. There's Lucy. Same thing. We like to feed Lucy squid, anchovies, small mackerel. If you're wondering why she's not eating every other animal in this tank, well, that's because sharks don't really do that. Lucy's got a small mouth, not big enough to eat any of our Pacific mackerel here, so she tends to leave those alone. Hopefully, that answers your question of why they don't eat the other fish in our tanks. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our tide pool tank here. Got you. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our tide pool tank here. And in a normal world, before the pandemic, this is our touch tank, but for now, we don't really let the guests touch animals in here. But I do want to show you some proper ways of holding some animals if you ever encounter them in the wild. Now, one of my most favorite animals here is the sea star. This is called a bat star, and you can simply just pick them up. I like to keep them in the water a little bit. They can last in and out of the water from time to for a couple hours as long as they stay wet. Now, they don't have any spikes. They feel like a rock, but their cousin, the sea urchin here, covered in spines. These help protect themselves against other animals. But if I simply okay, so first sign, this guy's stuck to the rock. I'm not going to pull him off. That can do some damage. So I'm going to go ahead and choose another one, maybe one of these guys off the side. But even though they're spiky, they feel more like if you ever sharpen a pencil, a wooden pencil, and then touch the top of it, that's kind of what they feel like. As long as you're not grabbing them too hard or you're not stepping or sitting on them, they're fairly harmless. They're not venomous at all. Really, really cool animals. People love to eat sea urchin. If you ever ate uni, that's what sea urchin is, uni. And they're mostly herbivores. They eat seaweed, the kelp. Sea otters love to eat sea urchins. They crack them open with a rock. But as you can see, nothing to be scared of. Simple handling here. I'm not holding on, not crushing them with my hand. They probably poke me before I crush them. Awesome. And then one of the last animals I want to pick up here for you guys is our sea cucumber. These guys are soft and squishy. They look spiky and bumpy, but they're not. This one's full of water because I took it out of the water. But as you can see, again, I'm not holding it roughly. I'm not squeezing it down. I'm touching it gently. When they're out of the water, they tend to tense up and carry water in their body so they can breathe out of the water. But when they get into the water, they tend to stretch out and become a longer. Usually you want to hold them with two hands. But quickly here, I'm going to run upstairs. I'm not running up the stairs. You shouldn't run up the stairs, boys and girls. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the octopus. Her name is Octavia. She's about a 3-year-old octopus. You can see the bottom of her arms. There you go. She's already noticed the camera. Now, one of the things we do with octopus is sometimes we'll stick our hand in the tank here. I'm not going to do it right now because of time, but we'll let her wrap her arms around us, get really, really familiar. She knows the scent and the taste of most of our aquarius, and she's very, very gentle. We like to feed her anything between clams, mussels, shrimp, crabs, fish, and we'll hand feed her too. A couple of her arms might wrap around our hand, and a couple of her other arms might wrap around the food, and then she'll bring it to the mouth where her beak is located. Now, she's a 2-spot octopus for size comparison. Here's how she is towards my hand. Really, really cool. Now, we do lots of enrichment or playing games and puzzles with her. There's containers that we give her. We fill it with food. She has to solve the puzzle and open the container. She's rewarded with food. We do color training, or recognition. So we'll hold up different color uh, uh, templates, and then she'll react one way to a certain color, react a different way to another color, and if she reacts the proper way, we'll reward her with a treat as well. Really, really cool there. And then if you're wondering what these pouches are, these are mermaid's purses, but these are empty. If we hang over here, one of the cool things we get to work with are shark eggs. These are mermaid's purses. They belong to a shark called a swell shark. And I'm going to rush down to the South support room right now to show you guys what the sharks look like when they come out. But these ones are new. They take about 9 to 12 months, depending on the quality of the water or the conditions of the water, to develop. That orange part in the middle, that's their yolk. That's what they'll be feeding on as they're developing in the egg. The shark is a little bit too small to even come up on the camera. I also want to say it's on the other side. But we'll go ahead and run downstairs. I say run, but I'm actually still walking. Now we're going down. Our aquarium is currently... We were open to the public earlier today. We closed at 5. We closed at like 4:30 something. But in the last couple minutes here, what's up? Yep. Last couple minutes here, I just wanted to show you guys the swell shark that comes out of the mermaid's purses. As you can see, we have a couple more in here. This is our back room. Here's our mermaid's purses. We were given a couple of them. And after they develop, when they're ready to hatch, they bite their way out with their tiny little teeth. And out comes a little swell shark. This one's about 2 years old now, maybe a little bit over 2 years old. But they started life inside of one of those little eggs. Now, they're nocturnal sharks. They don't swim around a lot, or they wake up at night, and they go to sleep in the daytime. We like to feed these ones, the young ones, we like to feed them small shrimps, small pieces of food, small cut up fish and squid. Really, really cool. Now, if you thought working in an aquarium was all fun and games, this right here is one of my most favorite things to talk about. This is a skimmer, a protein skimmer. This collects all that bubbles. That collects a bunch of fish poop. So it's always our job to clean up this bucket. Right now it's kind of clean. I'm assuming one of us cleaned it earlier today. But we have to clean that out. This is a sump. This collects lots of salt water. It brings it to a couple different stages. One stage collects biological waste, fish poop, natural stuff. This stage makes sure the temperature is just right. This stage filters out particles in the water. These are called bioballs. And then this is another filter back there. There's filter socks. And earlier I said that we're going to look at a different way to tell temperature. The temperature, it might be backwards for you guys, but the temperature for this tank that the shark eggs are in is 58.5 degrees right now. Awesome. Just one last look before we sign off here. I want to say thank you guys for joining me. Again, my name is Juan. I'm with the Roundhouse. Oh, that's my keyboard. I'm with the Roundhouse Aquarium in Manhattan Beach. If you're ever in the area, the South Bay area, be sure to check us out. We're at our website is roundhouseaquarium.org. Hopefully you guys enjoyed everything. As I leave here in a second, I guess I'll just walk back outside and show you guys anything else in the last minute or so. But hopefully, you guys enjoyed everything. It's a tight squeeze in here that you got to see. Right now it's a little bit dark. We have all the windows closed. Here's a last look of our tide pool tank. Lots of cool animals. Who knows, maybe one day you might become an aquarist, working with really, really cool ocean animals. There's a lot more I didn't show you. It's a really, really cool job. All right. All right, guys. I'm going to wave my last time on the camera, and I'll just point you guys at this tank for the next couple seconds.
I managed to get through almost the entire session without being unmuted. So, as I was saying, reason 5, STEM careers are awesome because you can follow your passion. You can be a surgeon and save the world and volunteer with Doctors Without Borders. And you can be, if you're passionate about climate change, be an engineer and work in renewable energy. Follow your passions. Okay, let's take a journey now with Caltech and discover how storms on Jupiter lead to better airplanes, and meet Salvador Gomez, an amazing first-gen college grad, soon to be a PhD grad, as he shares his personal journey explaining some very cool science. Take it away, Caltech.
Hello, and welcome to Science Journeys, Caltech's first online science education series. I'm Michael Alexander, the director of Caltech's public programming, and I'm very happy to have you all with us today. Caltech is one of the nation's premier science education and research institutions. In fact, Caltech created the Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, which has managed most of the United States' unmanned space flights. As we speak, there is an unmanned space mission on its way to Mars that includes a helicopter that will be the very first to ever fly on another planet. Our office is also responsible for bringing to the campus the Performing Arts series that takes place here in Beckman Auditorium. We would encourage you all to look to our website, where you can find out about all of the lectures and performing arts series that are going on here by going to events.caltech.edu. Today, I am proud to introduce Salvador Gomez, one of Caltech's outstanding scientist scholars. He is a member of the Club Latino, which has conducted many STEMonstrations. I'm sure many of you know that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And we've done that play on words as he is going into schools throughout the Pasadena area to give lectures to young students. Mr. Gomez is a Caltech grad student who also has been doing some very exciting research work on our campus. Today, he is reaching out to new and engaged audiences through this internet project. We are presenting this from Beckman Auditorium, which is right here on the campus, and we look forward to the day when all of you can come and see these programs in person. He is studying aerodynamics and is on his way to his own PhD. Of considerable interest, in addition to his work on campus, is his personal story. He is going to share information about his middle and high school years that I know will be very interesting to all of you, and it reminds me what an exceptional scientist he is. I know that you're going to hear fascinating information about the science he studies as well. So now, with great pleasure, I welcome to the stage Salvador Gomez.
Thank you for the introduction, Michael. I'm Salvador Gomez, a second-year graduate student at Caltech. I'm studying aeronautics, and I'll be talking to you guys about fluid dynamics, specifically how we go from disturbances and how we move on to turbulence. So I'll start off with a little bit about myself. I'm Salvador Gomez, a first-generation college graduate student. That means I'm the first in my family to have gone to a university. I grew up in Hayward, California. Here's a picture of my family on the left. And I went to school at UC Berkeley, a few cities away from where I grew up. After getting my degree, I came to Caltech to get a PhD. And a lot of people, you know, they focus on where they started and usually jump to where they're at now. But I think it's important to focus a little bit on the details. So growing up, my life was pretty uncertain. When I was in middle school, around 8th grade, my life kind of changed and was going through a lot of turmoil because my mom passed away, and because of the recession going on, my dad was in and out of work and was having trouble finding a steady job. My dad was able to make ends meet using the truck that you see in that picture by recycling scrap metal. So every day I would come home from school in high school, and I would help out my dad with his work, and I would also, you know, cook for the family, clean up the house, try to like make it a little nice for me and my brother and my dad. The only thing I found to really distract me from all the stuff going on at home was school. So I was really good at school, but college was not on my list. It wasn't something I had on my mind. Part of the reason was because, like I mentioned, I was the first in my family to go to college, so nobody around me had gone to college, none of my neighbors had gone to college, and it was just me. So I had to really figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So thankfully, I was around friends that had goals. They all had goals to go to college, and they had an idea of where they wanted their life to end up. Around junior year, so 11th grade, I started thinking about what I really wanted to do, and things started really started to click. So things started to click because I looked around what was going on in my life. I knew that I didn't want to work such a backbreaking job like my dad, you know, lifting these scrap metals, lifting these broken appliances and breaking them apart to get the recycled material. So I figured I wanted to do something that could make that type of work a little bit easier for my dad and make things a little bit more sustainable. So still working on recycling, but on the design aspect. So how could I make these appliances a little bit easier to recycle and have less of a carbon footprint? So that took me to basically 3 steps. I wanted to think about the life I wanted to live. So I wanted to live a more certain life. I didn't want to struggle finding a job. I didn't want to work a really hard, back-breaking job. I thought about what I was good at, and for me that was math and science. And it felt like engineering could take those skills that I had and that passion to create sustainable products, and it seemed like a good way to mend the two. And finally, I had to think about what could actually take me down that path. So what can make me an engineer? It turned out that was mechanical engineering, and to go down that path, I had to go to college. So that eventually led me to applying to UC Berkeley, and that's where I ended up studying mechanical engineering, and where I started feeling a different set of struggles. So one of these struggles was imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a belief that you do not belong or that you got there through luck. So being one of the few Hispanic students in my classes, being one of the few first-generation college students, it really felt that I didn't really belong in this place because all my peers had parents that were engineers, parents that were professors, parents that had gone to college, and they seemed way more equipped than I was. But I knew that I belonged there, and I had to really learn how I can succeed in this new environment. And for me, being able to succeed in college was learning how to study. So for the first time I was able to learn how to study. I was able to make friends that knew how to study and were able to show me the ropes, if you will. And I started enjoying my studies again. You know, I was able to really enjoy school because I was doing really well. So because of that, I got the opportunity to teach, and I got the opportunity to teach more students how to learn and how to study. And here you can see a picture of me studying with some of my classmates and even teaching a class to some freshmen. So those opportunities led me to want to go into academia. So I wanted to become a professor so that I could teach for a living. So when you become a professor, you have to decide what you want to research. So usually when you become a professor, you end up becoming an expert in a certain field. And for me, I ended up being really interested in fluid dynamics. So for those of you that don't know what fluid dynamics is, it's basically the study of, well, fluids. So a fluid is basically any substance that can move freely by outside forces, such as liquids, gases, and plasmas. The dynamic side is basically understanding how things move as a result of these external forces. So it's basically applying physics to gases, liquids, and plasmas. And as a fun way to think about it, you can think about this based off this cartoon, Avatar: The Last Airbender. So the main character, the guy in the orange, is able to master all 4 elements: water, air, fire, and earth. And what I argue is that if you study fluid dynamics, you can become the Avatar. So if you study fluids, you're able to understand how the oceans move, so how water moves. You're able to understand how storms and clouds form and move around. So you're able to understand air. You're able to understand combustion. So here we have some rocket science, and you're able to understand how these things can combust and burn up. So you're able to understand fire. And you can even understand how hot lavas in the earth are able to move the plates. So you're able to understand earth. So I argue that if you want to become the Avatar, study fluid dynamics. But there's more of a reason to understand this. So apart from knowing how things move, you're able to really make predictions and you're able to make design. So the motions that explain how coffee behave are also able to explain how we see storms and ocean waves. So here you can see 2 different aspects. You can see planetary things like in Jupiter and things as small as in a cup of coffee. There's also billions of dollars that you can save if you understand turbulence. So if you're able to understand the drag that certain bodies move against oceans or air. So if you've all heard about air resistance or drag, that's one thing that we want to try to work on. So there's several ways to study fluid dynamics. The first way is going through an analytical route, and this is what people have been doing for maybe the past couple hundred years. And what it involves is studying the equations of motion. So it involves studying the equations that govern fluid dynamics. So these equations, the Navier-Stokes equations, are so hard to solve that there's literally $1 million prize for anybody that can just prove that a solution exists to these equations. So if you're able to just prove that these solutions exist, you can get yourself $1 million. It seems pretty trivial, but there's actually a lot of math going on in these equations. So there's several maths that you need to understand to understand this equation. You need to understand algebra. So I'll show you an example of how we need algebra. You need to understand linear algebra, which you'll maybe see in high school, but you'll definitely see in college. You need to understand calculus, which you'll see at the end of high school and maybe at the beginning of college. You also need to understand real and complex analysis, which you'll see at the end in your college degrees if you study math. And finally, there's also math that we haven't even invented yet. So there's avenues that we haven't explored and can still be discovered. So because the fluid dynamics equations are so hard to solve, but we still have to deal with them, there's several ways that we can get away without solving the equations. The first way would be by simulating the problem with computers. So here you can see an airplane wing, so it's just a cross-section of the airplane wing, and we can see that it's being simulated by flow going over the wing. When I talk about simulations, what I want to talk about is approximating the flow with a computer. So one way I can think about this is if we think about a video game. So here on the left, we see a pretty rendered image that you'll probably see like on a Nintendo Switch. And on the right, you see what I grew up with and maybe your parents grew up with. And that's what we had to play video games with. So you can see how boxy and square the one on the right is, and you can see how smooth the one on the left is. So we can think of the one on the right being a simulation because it's supposed to represent the one on the left. The way that it's done is that the simulation takes a field. So for example, the air around the airplane wing, and it breaks it up into little squares, so little tiny cells. And what it does is that it basically does algebra. So it takes one cell, and based off the cells around it, it's able to solve for what's going on. Because you're doing a simulation on these tiny, tiny little cells, you're able to treat the problem as an algebra problem. And all you have to do is basically solve these algebra problems for everything on the field. Back in the day, so if you watched Hidden Figures, this is something that people actually had to do by hand, and there was actual offices of people just computing these things by hand. But nowadays, the computers can do this for you. They're so efficient at it that they're able to compute all these algebra problems in a matter of minutes or seconds and simulate the flow around an airplane wing. We can also see like examples of these simulations, and here's an example for a simulation that we can see online if we click on the following link. So in this simulation, we basically have fluid inside a square container, and if we move the cursor around, we're able to simulate what it'd be like to mix the fluid. So you can probably try this at home by clicking the link, or you can even have a cup of milk and you can put some food dye and just trace it around, and you would get similar pictures. So the last way is doing things by experiments. So that's where we take measurements in a controlled laboratory setting and simulate something in the real world. So again, we have the airplane wing, and we have air coming to the right of it. So it's meeting some air coming at it. And what you're seeing is path lines. So each of these little lines that you see are lines that a particle would follow as it flows around the airfoil. So just as this little orange thing finds and swirls all around, this is what experimentalists look at. They try to understand, they put a bunch of particles in a flow field and let the flow move around it, and basically trace out where these particles move in the fluid. Usually you need photographs so that you can take a picture of this and see all these particles in motion. You can also think about it like if you have a long exposure and you take a picture of a moving light, you can trace out the light. That's basically what experimentalists do when they do some of these visualizations. You can also see it if you have a fluid dye, like food dye, or if you put smoke and you can see like smoke coming out of a chimney. So as good as these computations or experiments are, they still have some hard parts. They still have some things that doesn't make them perfect. So what makes it hard in a computational sense is that computers are not strong enough to simulate everything in the flow. So just how the newest video game systems probably can't simulate every single thing in the real world, that's the trouble that we're having with our simulations. Experimentally, the issue that we have is that sometimes there's really tiny features or really big features that are really hard to measure. So one way that I can think about this is think about a shark. So a shark is a macro scale, so it's like maybe the size, maybe like 10 feet long. And then it also has shark skin that makes it move very efficiently. And these shark skin are on the micro scale. So the shark skin have features that are as thick as a human hair. So if you really want to understand how a shark moves, you need to understand how its body moves, so how its body behaves. But you also have to be able to measure these tiny little scales. So you have to measure the tiny little skin on the shark so that you're able to understand what makes the shark so efficient at swimming. And what it really comes down to is that it gets expensive. You can probably do this if you just throw enough money at it, get a bigger and bigger computer, or get more and more precise measurements. But sometimes it isn't really affordable, or it isn't really practical to do this. We have to really understand what the difference between a scientist and an engineer is. So a scientist will tell us what's going on physically, and they'll let us understand what's going on in the equations. And they're really interested in understanding more about the natural world. An engineer, on the other hand, tries to solve these problems with the equations. They try to simplify it as much as they can while still holding the relevant physics to try to make some progress and understand what's really going on so you can make designs or make predictions. So what engineers do is they try to model the fluid. And when you want to understand these equations, the Navier-Stokes equations that govern the fluid, we need to understand the different fluid properties. So fluids have something called density, which is their mass divided by their volume. That's what tells us which fluid is heavier and which fluid is lighter. So one way that you can think about this is by comparing things that you might be familiar to. So one of these things is a baseball and a tennis ball. So although the baseball and tennis ball have about the same volume, they're about the same size, baseball is heavier than the tennis ball. The reason for this is because the baseball is denser, so it's heavier, and the tennis ball is less dense, so it's lighter. And you can think about this by trying to understand what's inside the baseball. So if you look inside the baseball, you'd see a bunch of material inside, but if you look inside the tennis ball, you would see basically just the casing and a bunch of air inside. Because of this, we'd say that the baseball has more stuff, so it's more dense, whereas the tennis ball has less stuff and it's less dense. You can also think about this if you've ever tried to do this experiment where you try to stack different fluids. So here we have a stack of fluids in a cup. We have vegetable oil, water, dish soap, and corn syrup. And we can see that the less dense fluids float on top of the more dense ones. So the denser ones start to sink, and the lighter ones rise up. We can also understand how this works if we think about hot air. So in a hot air balloon, you heat the air, and because it gets hotter, it rises. So hot air becomes less dense, and it's able to float when it's around cold air. The next of these properties is viscosity. And basically, viscosity is the resistance to motion. And what we think about it sometimes is how thick the fluid is, and we denote it by mu. So here you can see a video of 4 different fluids being poured down. We can see that the corn syrup and the honey flow down pretty slowly, whereas the dish soap and the maple syrup flow down pretty fast. Because of this, we say that the honey and the corn syrup are more viscous than the other two. Another way you can think about viscosity is think about the difference between walking in our everyday environment where we're surrounded by air and walking in a pool where you're surrounded by water. So if I walk around here, I have no issue and I'm able to walk around pretty freely. But if I walk around in a pool, I have to really struggle to move my body because I have to move against the resistance of the water. You can also think about this if you're trying to mix a cup of water or a cup of honey. The next thing that we look at with fluids is we are really interested in their velocity. So their velocity is basically how each part of the fluid moves. And there's different ways that we can visualize the velocity, but ultimately this is what we try to capture with these Navier-Stokes equations. Basically, the Navier-Stokes equations are force equals mass times acceleration. So they're basically Newton's laws applied to a fluid. So basically what F equals ma tells you is how much force I need to apply to move an object. So here I have 2 different boxes. One is 10 pounds and one is 1,000 pounds. Because they're on Earth, they have weight because of gravity, so they have a force due to gravity. And if I want to move the boxes, I need to apply different forces to it. So if I want to move the 10-pound box, I need to apply less of a force than if I wanted to move the 1,000-pound box. So if you really want to move these boxes, you need to overcome their weight. There's several forces that act on a fluid. The first of this is pressure. So pressure is the force from the fluid atoms as they move around. So it feels like something's pushing against the walls. So here in this balloon, we see all the little fluid particles trying to move, they're bouncing around, and they're trying to expand and push against the balloon. So that's why when you blow air into a balloon, it expands because the air molecules are just bouncing around, pushing against those walls. The next one we feel is friction, and friction is usually due to drag, and it's what you feel when you move against the fluid. This friction is caused because of the viscosity. So here you can see a plate being dragged across some water. And you can see by the smoke visualization that it causes the smoke around it to move around. And you can kind of visualize how the turbulence is affecting the drag. So if we put all of that together, we get the Navier-Stokes equations. And we can dissect each part of this equation. The first one on top basically tells us what comes in must go out. The second one is a little bit more complicated, and then that's the force equals mass times acceleration. So the stuff on the left-hand side is the mass and acceleration, and that's where the density will come in. On the right-hand side, we have all the forces. So we have pressure differences, viscosity, and we have effects of gravity and density. So although this may seem complicated, we can try to understand this by making simplifications. One of my colleagues once said that life is like the Navier-Stokes equations. It may seem complicated at first, but once you identify the important terms, it will become clear how do you make progress. So although these equations seem really difficult, there are ways we can try and simplify the equations to actually solve some problems. So sometimes we know that there's going to be a tiny disturbance in the flow. So here we have some fluid moving through a pipe, and it's moving from left to right. But we see that there's tiny little disturbances that are not really going from left to right, but they're small. So the overall fluid is going from left to right, but these tiny disturbances are just causing some difference in the flow. So we try to model these equations, and we write these equations for the disturbance. And you can think of these equations as something familiar. So if you've done a little bit of algebra, you've probably studied y equals mx plus b. And if you've studied a little bit more of algebra, then you've probably studied this equation for a parabola. And you notice here that in the blue, there's something raised to the second power, so something quadratic. And this quadratic thing acts pretty interestingly if you have something really small. So if you have something like 0.01 and you square it, it becomes even smaller. So we can use this idea that these quadratic things, these highlighted blue things, if you have something small, they become even smaller. We can use this idea to do something called linearization. So here we're plotting the parabola from x equals 0 to 10, and we're also plotting the line from x equals 0 to 10. If you're going from 0 to 10, you can see that there's a big difference between the two. But if you look at a smaller domain, so if we zoom into maybe some region where x is really small, we can see that they pretty much sit right on top of one another. So if you're looking at x really, really tiny, you don't have to consider the highlighted blue term. You don't have to consider the quadratic term. You can get away with only considering the y equals mx plus b term. And that's what we do when we study linearized equations. A really simple example, so this is where we sit two different fluids on top of one another. So these two fluids would have different densities. So you can think of two different examples. One example would be a glass with oil and water on top. And you know that nothing's going to happen because the oil and water don't mix, and because the oil is lighter than the water. But if you have the other case where you have something with more density on top of something with less density, so you have a heavier liquid on top of a lighter liquid, you know that they're going to start mixing and things are going to get pretty messy. So depending on the fluids that we choose, we get different behavior. So one is stable, where you can have a nice clean line between the two, and the other is unstable, where you have mixing occurring. So when we try to understand this, we call this stability. So we try to look at these linearized equations, and we try to model a disturbance between the fluid as a wave. So it has some characteristic length and some characteristic speed. And what we're interested in seeing is how this wave will grow as a function of time. And it turns out that it grows by a growth factor. This growth factor will tell us if it's stable or unstable. So if it's stable, the disturbance won't grow. But if it's unstable, the disturbance will grow. So here we plot out the disturbance. You can see here that in this case, there's no growth and it's stable. You can have another case where the disturbance will actually shrink. So you can start off from the original wave and it'll become smaller and smaller and smaller. So this is also stable. Or you can have the other case where it's unstable, where the disturbance just keeps growing and growing and growing. And we can look at this physically. So in the case where the disturbance doesn't grow, you can think about this as a nice, calm ocean waves. So when the ocean is really calm, like there's no storm or anything like that, you'll have that the waves just oscillate pretty nicely and they don't grow, they don't change, they just stay nice and uniform. And we can also think of another case where it's also stable, such as when you have the oil and the water. So here, any disturbance between the two surfaces of the water, of the oil and the water, will just decay and shrink. But you can also have something unstable. So this is when you have the milk and the coffee. So if you have milk, it's more dense than the coffee on the bottom, and you actually get it to start sinking, and you get mixing. So if you look at the two, here you can see a close-up of what's going on between the water and the coffee, and between the coffee and the milk, and you can see that it starts shrinking, and you have some link scales, but you still have some stuff sinking down, and that's because the disturbance has grown. But you can also take advantage of this instability to make some art. A Mexican muralist developed a painting technique that uses these ideas to paint cool textures. So he's able to use the linear instability to develop really nice painting textures. So the way that he's able to make these cool paintings is by placing a heavier fluid on top of a lighter fluid. So you get a heavier paint and you put it on top of a light paint, and then you just let it sit, and you get these patterns that begin emerging. So here you can see how you have the white paint on top of the black paint, and then these patterns just start to emerge. You can actually do this at home if you have two different paints. All you have to do is figure out which one's more dense. Usually the dark one is less dense. So you pour a thin layer of paint, and then you pour another thin layer on top of that one. And after a minute or two, the features will start to appear before it dries. So you can actually try this at home, and you can hopefully recreate some of these cool paintings. So now we'll get to a little bit about what I do in my research. So in my research, we try to understand turbulence. So that's where you have a disturbance that basically grew out of control, and now we have a lot of mixing going on. So when people usually think about turbulence, they think about airplanes when they started getting dizzy. So you've probably encountered this if you've been unfortunate enough to be in an airplane that starts shaking. But the turbulence that we're interested in is the turbulence that is around an airplane at all times. So this turbulence is usually seen on the wings of the airplane or on the surface, and it's caused when the airplane tries to fly against the air. So as it tries to displace the air around it, it starts to drag on this air, and because it's going so fast, it causes it to mix a lot. And it ends up causing a lot of drag. And it ends up being something that costs airline companies, shipping companies, billions of dollars, because this drag just ends up costing so much in fuel. And what turbulence is basically when flow is characterized by strong mixing and vortices of different sizes, and the flow is very irregular. Vortices are basically swirling fluid, and a lot of people used to think about this as randomness, but there's order to the madness. What some people think about it is by identifying things of different sizes. So here in this drawing, you can think about different vortices, so different swirling fluids of different sizes. So you have really small vortices near the bottom, and you have larger vortices at the top. This makes sense when you look at it at some experimental snapshots. And you can see that near the bottom of that snapshot, there's a lot of mixing and a lot of really tiny features. But outside of the snapshot, there's really big vortices. So if you recall the shark, we can think about the smaller vortices being affected by the shark skin and the bigger vortices being affected by the bigger parts of the shark. So if we really want to understand what's going on at the small scale, we should probably target the smaller vortices. So this is a really hard problem to solve. One way that we can start to make some progress on this is by borrowing some ideas from image compression. So when you take a picture, you save a bunch of numbers representing each part of the picture, known as a pixel, and you save that as a file. So if you have a megapixel, that ends up being 1,000,000 numbers saved. And it ends up being that if you want to take a bigger picture, you have to get a bigger file size. So if you want to decrease the size of that file, you can try to compress the image. And what that entails is breaking up the picture into a bunch of different snapshots. When you want to recreate the picture, you add it all up. So here, if we wanted to draw the cat, we'd break up the cat into a bunch of tiny little snapshots, add them up, and then we'd have the cat again. So we want to see what happens if we add different parts of these snapshots. So if we have the first one, it's just a blurry mess. But if you add like 10 of them, you can start seeing the cat again. And if you have 50 of them, you get something that really resembles the cat. And it turns out that because each of these snapshots has about 0.1% of the information of the original image, you can recreate basically what you had with the original image at about 2% of the data. So if you use 2% of the data, you have something that resembles the cat, but it has a little bit less detail. If you go up to 5%, you get more of the detail. And if you keep adding more and more snapshots, you keep getting smaller and smaller details. So if we're interested in really the biggest parts, we want to really figure out what snapshots contribute the most to the picture. So once we identify which of these snapshots contribute the most to the picture, we know which ones to use when we recreate the image. What if we use some of these ideas in understanding turbulence? So what if we're able to get a turbulent field and create some snapshots so that we don't have to understand all the details of the turbulence, but just understand the really important parts? Well, for that, you need to find out a way to recreate these snapshots. One way that people recreate the snapshots is just by using the data and using basically the same idea as with the picture of the cat, and then just representing it in different snapshots. So you can see that each of these snapshots is trying to recreate this airfoil, and each of the snapshots just has a different part of the fluid or a different part of the behavior. And if you add it up, you recreate the image on the right. Another way is by using the equations. So the equations actually let us separate the fluid into different sized vortices and rank them based on their energy. So if you're able to do this for a turbulent field, you're able to get a series of different snapshots that you can use to recreate some of the stuff we see in turbulence. So if you use a few snapshots, you're able to recreate some things that you find in experiments. So here we used a few snapshots, and we're able to recreate the picture in the green, which is basically a visualization from an experiment. And you can see that although it doesn't get all the details, it's able to get a lot of the main ideas and the main behavior that you see in the original experiment. And the reason we want to use some of these models is because you can not only target different things with different length scales. So if we know, for example, that we want to see things on the size of a length of hair like the shark skin, that we can try to target that. And it would also let us simulate quickly how changing different patterns affect the field. So for example, if we wanted to try out different patterns on the surface of a airplane wing, one thing we can try is maybe designing something that's similar to shark skin and putting it on an airplane. And there's several patterns we can use, but using a reduced order model would help us test a lot of these very quickly. So in conclusion, I just want to repeat the quote again. So life is like the Navier-Stokes equations. It may seem complicated at first, but once you identify the important terms, it will become clear how to make progress. So in the first case we looked at, we tried to linearize the flow. So we were able to make predictions based on the stability of the flow, based on simplifying the equations. And what people do now, which is more modern, is by looking at snapshots of the flow and trying to use those snapshots to recreate the full picture that we had. I'd like to thank you all for watching the presentation.
Thank you, Salvador, for your fascinating presentation. This website also has a link that you can use to ask Salvador questions. He will be responding online within 48 hours of the premiere showing of this lecture. I also want to thank Mitch Aiken and Kitty Cahalan of Caltech's Teaching, Learning, and Outreach Office, as well as Mary Herrera from the Office of Public Programming, and the entire academic media technology team and the team from Event Productions. And thank you to the Caltech Employees Federal Credit Union, the Friends of Beckman Auditorium, and our many sponsors who make these types of programs possible. We look forward to your joining us again for other performing arts events and science lectures, which you can find out about by checking our website, events.caltech.edu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Salvador. Your father must be so proud. And thank you, Caltech, for sharing an amazing graduate student's journey and teaching us a bit about thermodynamics. So now it is time to wrap up. Thank you all of you who partnered today to help us showcase careers in STEM, Girls in Focus, Carrot Group and Esports, DeVry University, Roadhouse Aquarium, and Caltech. I hope you all learned as much as I did about some of the great opportunities in STEM, and we hope this helped create more awareness about opportunities in STEM in Los Angeles. Just remember, upcoming events are happening throughout the month of April on Thursdays. April 15th is STEM Educators Day. April 22nd is Earth Day. April 29th is STEM Innovation in LA. And information on each of these days' events is available on our website at cityofstem.org. And of course, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget YouTube, where you can find this afternoon's show without interruption. And of course, I cannot leave without saying two huge thank yous. First of all, to the team that is on the other side of this walkie-talkie that's in my ear and making sure that I'm not messing this up too much. It's the production team here at City of STEM, Laura Brim, David Arrieta, Diana Canales, Chi Ni, Monica Jackson, and Sarah Medina. Thank you all just across the room where I can't see you, but you're making the magic happen. And speaking of magic, as I said at the beginning, none of this happens without the investment of sponsors. So let's give a hand to all of the sponsors who have invested to make City of STEM a successful event. Thank you again for spending your afternoon with us. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm Amy Gratt, and on behalf of the entire City of STEM team, Thanks for joining us and have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.